Joe, if we received any written comments today.
We did not receive any written comments.
Okay, then we'll close the general public comment period and move into our first item of business is the work session. And that is Agenda Bill 20-270. It's the future of the recycling program. Purpose of the meeting tonight is have a discussion and possible direction to staff. It is an action item. Ned, I think you were going to help me with this.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. Annette Spickard, City Manager, and I'm going to ask if Mr. Scott Carnes is on the line from Lakeshore Disposal.
Yes, good morning. Good.
Hi, Scott. Thanks so much for calling in to participate. So I'll just give a little introduction and then I'm going to turn it over to Scott to share information with the council, and then we'd like to engage in a dialogue with you all about what you would like to see come back to you at some point in the future. So Scott Carnes, who's on the line, is our local operations manager for Lakeshore Disposal, and you've met him in the past. And he has been actively working with Valley County to establish the new Lake Fork recycling facility. And he's also very active in researching recycle programs and opportunities in the greater Idaho area. So he and I have talked about given the move of the McCall Depot from over on Dinehard Lane down to the Lake Fork facility, or I guess he can explain how that will work. We thought we would touch base with you and see if, given the information he's going to share with you tonight about how the recycling market is looking, if you want us to explore any other options for recycling here in McCall, or if you would like to wait and see how the new facility in Lake Fork works and have folks travel there to drop off their materials. So Scott, did you want to go ahead and jump in?
Sure. Thank you, Annette, for that pleasant introduction. What I'd like to share with the council this evening is, first, we're all well aware that the recycling depots in the valley are moving to Lake Fork, and that site is under construction at this time. The county got some concrete poured, I believe on Tuesday. They still need to get a fence up and they need to gravel it and kind of finish it up. I would say in the next month, that should be a completed project and we should be moving on down there. What I'd like to just mention for this conversation is we've had many discussions in the past regarding curbside recycling in the city of McCall. And Lakeshore has made some proposals back in 2017. And at that time, it was decided to put it kind of on the back burner and kind of see what happens. In light of that, since that scenario, as you are probably all well versed in the recycling world, things have changed a lot. So if the city of McCall would like to look at doing some different things with recycling, we have a few options. Some are going to be more expensive than others, and some may not be as expensive. Right now, the way the proposal has always been set up for the city is everybody that's a subscriber to Lakeshore Disposal would get a second can, and it would be a mandatory service for them. Not the entire city, but the people that subscribe to our service that we come by and pick up their garbage. At that time, that service was going to be in the neighborhood of $9, $10 a month. What we're finding now in the industry, there's money in cardboard. In other words, cardboard is fairly easy to recycle, and there's actually a slight return. It's not a huge return. It's a very slight return. Very slight return on aluminum, paper, and then of course we recycle tin with the rest of the metal up at the transfer station. So I'll just kind of give you the rundown of how it would work if tomorrow we flipped a switch and we started picking up recycle, commingled single stream recycle at the residence. We would take it to Lake Fork. We would bale it. Those bales would go on a truck and they would end up in Utah. Then those bales would be sorted on a sort line. And that cost would be somewhere in the neighborhood of $85 to approximately $110 a ton to have that done. The other option that I've been approached with is, well, why can't we take it to Boise and have it done there? Western Recycling does it all day long. That is correct. However, Western Recycling has been for about 18 months very backed up down there. And there is a lot of their commingled single stream product being baled and shipped over to Utah to a facility over there where they get it sorted. So if we went that route, we would then be paying transportation twice. We'd be paying one sorting facility, but there'd be a lot more cost to send it to Boise because at some point it's going to end up over in Utah to be sorted. The other option for the city would be if they could locate an area to have the same type of facility that we have currently on Dinehard, maybe with a little bit different structure around it. And I don't mean building, but I mean just how it's ran, and how things are dropped off, and how that is controlled. My fear of that, like I discussed with Annette, was if we do that here, we're going to take away from what the county's doing in Lake Fork. And as we all know, 75% of the recycling that comes out of Valley County comes out of McCall, the Dinehard location. So this exercise or workshop, if you will, was to ask, what would you guys like to see happen? And if anything, what would you like to see happen? And then I can kind of go back and say, okay, this is how much it's going to cost. There's variables for the curbside. If the city of McCall has mentioned in years past that they would like to see mandatory garbage service for the homes here. Right now there's about 2,900 residents in the city of McCall, thereabouts. I think it might be just over that. And we have approximately 1,700 subscribing customers. If the garbage service was mandatory and the recycling program was mandatory, the overall cost to the resident would be less than what it would be if we put it together with just our 1,700 customers. So I'll kind of pause here and let you guys absorb that a little bit and answer any questions that you guys might have.
Scott, this is Mayor Bob. Thanks for that overview. I think one of the questions we'll have come up, and I'll give you a little time to think about that, is how that $100 a ton down in Utah, what you think that would be if it was commingled for the 1,700 paying customers right now. So think about that, and then I'll run down through council. I'm going to start with Tom Sowers.
Well, I'm just gonna keep listening because I think we kind of touched on this a lot before. So I appreciate your time and your presentation. I'm forward to hearing the rest.
Thanks, Tom. Melanie, do you have some questions for Scott or some comments?
Not yet. I'm still kind of processing what I just heard. And I guess I would like to continue, but thank you very much for being with us, Scott.
Yes, no problem.
Right?
I don't have any questions at this point.
Thank you, Mike. Colby?
I guess you mentioned that things have changed since 2017. I guess what specifically were you alluding to on that?
So what I was alluding to on that is the product that's able to be recycled and the market that recycling is going to. Your 3 through 7 plastics is basically at the end product. Ours isn't. Thankfully, we're able to send it to the concrete kiln in Utah for it to be reused as a drying agent. But there are a lot of locations here in the Mountain West, also on the West Coast, Midwest, that those plastics are they're currently being landfilled. What we're seeing in the market is 1s and 2s are recyclable, but within those 1s and 2s, there's specifics that they want. And so when the market changed, sometimes during the year, the market will say, we want number 1s, we want only milk jugs. So the only number 1 that any recycle plant that's actually going to buy the product and actually recycle it, they'll say, we only want milk jugs. Sometimes it's detergent bottles. Sometimes it's water bottles. So just because and that's the way, just so we're being transparent, that's the way the Lake Fork facility will be ran. They're going to tell me, we want milk jugs. So when people bring their plastic in, we're going to put the milk jugs in one, and then the rest, whether it's 1s, 2s, or 3 through 7, they're going to go into a commingle bin. Those will then be baled separately. And when we ship them, they'll pull the milk jugs out and they'll sell them at a higher value. And then the county will continue to pay for the rest of the plastics that are not being used as a product to recycle. Will go to the concrete kiln to be used as a drying agent.
Great, thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
And one thing I'd like to mention too, just as an education piece here, is plastic is made up of different molecules, and I'm definitely not a scientist, but different plastics take a different way to break them down and recycle them. And that's where we run into these, that's where the market, how it changes. So just kind of a piece to think about there so that you understand why not all plastics can be recycled.
Thanks. That's all I have at the moment.
Thank you, Colby. Scott, this is Bob. Real quick question. Let's go back to that discussion about plastics and the drying agent in a kiln. So does that mean that some of those plastics are being burned, combusted?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. They're being, they use it to dry the lime, from what I understand. It's a kiln product that they use. Very good example. If anybody's ever gone out towards Baker City, you go through Lime, and if you look up there, there's a big kiln, and 9 times out of 10, there's Les Schwab or American Tire, discount tire trailers there. That's where they take their tires, and they use their tires in their kiln to help dry the lime as it comes out of the earth.
Thanks for explaining that.
Yep.
I don't have any further questions, so, well, I actually do that. I think we do need some, we know that residents of McCall, we've done a pretty good job of searching out their ideas, and they're not real keen on the mandatory garbage requirement. At least that's what we learned a few years back. Even though a lot of cities do that, I think our constituents still like the flexibility of being able to haul their garbage to the landfill or the transfer site. So if we had only 1,700 customers as we do now, do you have a good feel on how much that the mandatory recycling would be for those 1,700 customers?
Well, my very best guess, and this is just a guess, and I'm gonna say it can swing $2 to $3 either direction, but we're gonna be in that $14, $15 range, I believe.
$14 to $15 per month, per customer. Somewhere in there. Thanks, Scott. That's all the questions.
I thought I heard $10 a month or something earlier when you were speaking just a few minutes ago.
That's the way, yes, that's where we were at back in 2017 when it didn't cost, the cost wasn't there. We were going to, it was going to go to wherever it was going to end up, but the sorting facilities didn't charge $85 to $110 depending on the time of year to sort it. Now that's what they're charging.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott.
Yep.
So, Scott, based on our questions, any other information you'd like to share? And then I'll do another sweep through council to see if they have other thoughts.
No, I think I've kind of shared, and just if you guys want to make a decision at a later date, Annette can always shoot me an email and let me know if there's something that you guys want to see, firm pricing on. We're more than happy to do that. Whatever direction you guys want to go. I'm just looking for a little bit of guidance, I guess. So if there is any, that's great. And if there isn't at this time, then we can, look at it at a later date.
That makes sense. And thanks for explaining the dynamic nature of the markets and when it comes to things like plastics. Appreciate your explanation. That's always been a mystery to me.
Mayor Bob,
no
before you do your wrap up, can I ask a couple of small things?
Yep.
Okay. Scott, can you talk a little bit about whether or not there's a difference between commercial, industrial customers and residential, and if what types of service you provide, to our commercial customers who do generate like a lot of cardboard, for example, if anything is changing with the new Lake Fork facility in that respect? And then can you speak a little bit to whatever education your company or the Valley County group is going to do to let people know of the move of the facility to Lake Fork? Because I think one of our concerns is that once you clear the site in McCall, we may still have people dropping trash there and stuff, and trying to be proactive in making sure they know where the new location is as they're leaving town to go back to the valley, or if they're full-time residents, you know, when they're making their trip to the post office or whatever, that they know where to go. So would you mind touching on those two things?
Yeah. So as far as what we do with our commercial businesses here, we do have a cardboard service that we provide on Fridays. That will not change. That will continue going forward. The only thing that we have removed at this time was the hand-picked cardboard route that we did, and that was due to COVID. And at this time, we're not ready to restart that service. And honestly, we're not sure if that hand-picked service will be implemented again. It's something that will be in discussion in the next couple months. As far as how the move is being communicated, the county is handling that on their end, as they're putting things on Facebook, they're putting things on their website. I believe they wanted the city of McCall to put things on their website. I believe Donley and Cascade are kind of being communicated that way. And something I don't know for sure, but I believe there was going to be signage left at the depots for, you know, an extended period of time, however long that is, you know, 2 or 3 months, of directing people to the new facility.
Okay, great. Thank you. So one last information item, Mayor, for the council is the Chamber of Commerce does have a working group of folks that's been a little bit quiet recently because of COVID and everything, but there is a group of business folks that are very interested in recycling and how we can have greener practices locally, especially in the retail, commercial restaurant establishments here. And so now that the Lake Fork facility is coming online, I think that group will probably start taking this topic up again. And Scott has been very gracious to offer his expertise and meet with us to think of ideas to address you know, for example, all the glass that comes out of, you know, restaurants or cardboard, or the use of non-plastic materials, etc. So there's a lot of different facets to this issue. And so we appreciate your time to get back engaged again and start thinking about it again. And as you'll recall, when you adopted your climate resiliency plan, there are elements within that plan for the city to go down a path around solid waste management as well. So we'll be working on this topic for a while. But again, Scott and I just thought it'd be good to touch base with everybody and see if you had some strong feelings about curbside still, or the depot concept, or some hybrid, or if you would like to wait and see how the performances of the Lake Fork facility and whether or not moving it does impact the level of recycling in our area before we you know, decide to do something different here. So anyway, just want to make sure you know that it is on our plates again, and try to get re-engaged with you all on it.
Thank you, Annette. Thank you, Scott. I'm gonna, tweak the council one last time to see if you have any thoughts or suggestions on, what Annette just asked us. Start with you, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Scott, and thank you, Annette. I kind of heard a little bit of alluding to like a more of a portable concept or like the depot style. And I know I've seen it in other communities. I don't know if that's been kind of looked at with this moving. Because I've seen in other communities where, on Tuesday, they'll have the recycling trailer of some sort and maybe a custodian or somebody there for a couple hours and people from that area bring stuff. I've heard that brought up also.
Melanie?
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Scott.
oh, no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Okay, Melanie?
So I was kind of thinking the same thing that Tom just said, and I think it's really interesting. Heard a couple of comments from citizens that, we're talking about maybe doing a co-op type thing where they had members and doing a transportation day. I think there's several things we can do, but I really feel like we kind of have to see how it's working initially, and then go forth from there. But, I like the opportunities that I'm hearing about, I will say.
Thanks, Melanie. Mike, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think we ought to see how things progress here and the feedback that we get and take it from there. I don't feel like we need to make any kind of decisions this evening,
Right.
other than just, I think we need to see how everything goes.
Yep. Colby?
Yeah, Scott, when we talk about the curbside pickup, is it still a requirement that all subscribers would have to get the curbside pickup as well in order for that to work?
Yes. Yes, we're looking, and let me just clarify, just so that you guys understand why. We're looking at an expense of approximately $450,000 to $500,000 to start that project. The trucks, the garbage trucks that we have, they cost us anywhere from $325,000 to $350,000, and we would have somewhere in the neighborhood of $100,000 in carts to put forth out to the community. So the startup of that program comes with a pretty high price tag. So that's why the mandatory service would have to be implemented to the subscriber.
Sure. And then if that was implemented, you were saying that essentially it's just a one container all thrown into a truck and you take it down to the Lake Fork facility and separate it there and bale it?
We don't have a way to separate it at the Lake Fork facility. It would go down there and it would be baled as a commingle, and then it would be shipped to Utah, Boise or Utah, where there would be a cost of $85 to $125 a ton to sort it.
And are you charging someone that shows up to the Lake Fork facility with like a ton of mixed recycling?
The recycling currently is all separated, even at the depots, so that will continue at the Lake Fork facility. There will be no charge for anyone to drop off at the Lake Fork facility, but their recyclable material does have to be separated. It can't be thrown into one bin, no.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to, figure out if there's a solution where, I know that the mandatory is like a 4-letter word, like taxes around here. It seems like that, you were there for the mandatory trash cans and the bare trash cans and all of that. So it's a tough fight, but like what is it that the city could do that we might be able to meet somewhere in the middle to be able to like operate something similar that what we have currently, where folks don't have to drive to Lake Fork. Maybe we can transport it to that facility.
Yeah, and that's what that was what I was referring to earlier, was if there was a location that the city decided they wanted to have containers put at, and they wanted to figure out, one way or the other of having it manned or not manned, or, well, it would need to be manned because we wouldn't want to have any mistakes made in McCall that would compromise what we're doing in Lake Fork, as far as something being thrown in the plastic that could potentially ruin it. So whatever we do in McCall needs to be mirrored off of what is happening in Lake Fork. But that isn't, I mean, we can haul it down there, but I believe that the facility would need to be manned, whether that's a Lakeshore employee or a City of McCall employee manning the facility, and then we have the trucks and the containers to be able to provide the service to transport it down to Lake Fork.
Got it. And then I guess just to clarify something again with the mixed recycling, what is going to happen, when the Lake Fork Center fires up? Was it that you're going to kind of be selective on what materials are getting shipped off to be recycled, or is it it's not all getting mixed together? I guess, can you kind of go over that one again for me?
Yeah, so for cardboard, we're gonna have a brand new cardboard box down there. It'll be broken down and put into the cardboard slot. The tin, we'll be able to make sure that tin is going in tin and aluminum is going into aluminum. And we'll be able to make sure that 20-foot pieces of PVC are no longer put into the plastics. When it comes to the plastic part of it, we're going to get guidance from the recycle buyers. They're going to tell us right now the market is calling for milk jugs. So there'll be a bin for just the milk jugs to go into. And then all the other plastic will go into another bin, or another half of the bin. That way, when we go to bale it, we will bale the commingled plastic 1 through 7s will all be baled together. Then we will be able to take the milk jugs and bale them as one bale. That way they're being used, and there's more return on our efforts. And it's going to, it's being greener, so to speak, that way. And then the paper, we'll still take the mixed paper. We still will not receive shredded paper or neon paper or anything like that. But, well, I guess we can do neon paper now, but there's a few things there that we get that, we'll just tell people, hey, this has to go in mainstream trash. Our goal is to be able to sort this material before it gets to the best of our ability. A sorting facility has, you know, a conveyor belt with multiple people picking out the different material and placing it where it needs to go. But we're going to do that on the front end, where when people pull in there, they're going to be instructed on what can go where and when, or what can go in what bin.
Got it. Thanks. I think that's pretty much all I have for questions, I think. As far as thoughts, I'm not so much the wait and see approach on this one. I'd rather just have recycling opportunities here locally. Maybe not necessarily curbside, but I would like to try to find a solution for local recycling sooner than later, rather than the wait and see.
Thanks, Colby. And Scott, this is Mayor Bob. I don't have any further observations, but I took some really good notes. Like a lot of times in work sessions, we get some really good things to think about, the 5 of us on council, and then we get back to Annette and ask for more information. So I suspect this topic will be similar, and thanks for your help tonight. Annette, thanks for organizing this. I think we'll move on to the second half of our work session, which is an item that I asked to be added on early this week, and that is wildfire preparedness. We've had a very active wildfire season in the Western United States, and we have invited Stephanie Nelson of Wildfire Prevention Associates and McCall Donnelly Fire Chief Garrett DeYoung to update us on wildfire preparedness.
Okay, Mayor Bob, I know I saw Garrett, our fire chief, come on the line, and my apologies, that's my typo in the agenda bill, calling it the McCall Donnelly Fire Chief. Garrett is our McCall Fire Chief. Juan Bonilla is the Donnelly Fire Chief, so my apologies for that mistake. And now I see Stephanie is online. Yep, here they both are. So I just wanted to give them a second to get unmuted and the video screen on for you. Earlier today, I did email to the council Chief DeYoung's handout that he was going to talk about tonight. So hopefully you saw that. And then Stephanie also has some material for you. So I'm going to turn it over to them to give us all an update on this important topic.
Good evening. I don't think we talked about who was going to go first. So, Garrett, do you want to lead off?
You bet. Thanks for having us on.
Okay.
Annette, you gave the evacuation checklist out.
Sorry, I was on mute. I did send that evacuation checklist out via email. Is that something you want me to put up on my screen, or you can go ahead and present about it and they can refer to it in their email later? We'll also make sure that we have a link, if we don't already, to your fire department webpage where you have all this information. So your choice if you want to pull it up or not.
No, we had an evacuation check sheet like this that was similar, and we put together one that's more specific to McCall and hyperlinked our website and Code Red information and stuff on there. The Code Red system is what the county sheriff's department is using to alert people in case we have an evacuation order for a wildfire or any other kind of emergency. And so we've really been trying to educate the public on signing up for Code Red. And so we thought this would make it a little easier as we share it. People can be hyperlinked to it and register themselves. It really just gives it an outline of what you should do in the event that a wildfire is coming in, and in regards to being prepared, and then what you can do to help secure your house and what to do when you leave. We've had quite a bit of discussion at the county level with Chief Bonilla from Donley, who is the Valley County Emergency Manager, and with Police Chief Justin Williams. And one of the issues with coming up with standard evacuation guidelines is it's so dependent on fire activity that we tried to make this guideline so that people know 2 different routes out of wherever they live and are comfortable with those routes, and really getting them to the valley floor and away from timber. So that's what I've got on the evacuation checklist, and would entertain any questions, or I'll jump into our woody debris collection statistics.
Garrett, since you don't have the checklist up on the screen and they might not be looking at it, could you just highlight maybe a couple examples of things that are on the checklist that people can do?
Yeah, it's really stay in communication, stay on the Red Zone app, and then, or the Code Red app, sorry. We have another program called Red Zone. Stay on Code Red and look for alerts, be situationally aware. If something big's going on, it's for people to prepare to evacuate and come up with a plan before they need to. Basic stuff like keep your cell phone charged, have your pets and animals ready to go, and then stuff like shut all your windows and doors if you have to leave relatively quickly but have time to prepare. Move your furniture to the center of the room, pull your window drapes and stuff down because they can start fires. Shut off your propane system, start your sprinkler system, turn off your HVAC system in your house so it's not pushing air around. And then if you have to leave immediately. Know 2 ways to go. Try to assist your disabled neighbors if you have them and stay in communication with them. Take the fastest paved route to the valley floor away from the fire. And it gives everybody a kind of a check sheet. They can write down phone numbers of relatives, family, friends, have some emergency meeting locations scoped out. And then phone numbers for 911 and the sheriff's office, including a link to the Valley County Sheriff's Office Facebook page. Any more questions on that, Annette?
No, thank you for doing that. I appreciate it.
So I ran all of our data today. We started the Woody Debris program in 2012 with putting a container in front of the fire station so that people could bring their woody debris here instead of burning it. From 2005 through 2011, 2005 was the earliest we were keeping track of burn permit data on our software system, but we averaged 285 burn permits a year. Since 2012, our average burn permits issued, and this is in the city and in the area around the city, is now 85 a year. So it went from 285 a year to 85 a year. For the past 9 years, that's been the average. In the last 2.5 years alone, and I say 2.5 because we do a spring woody debris collection and a fall collection. And so we've done the 2020 spring collection, and we'll do the next one in October. We've dumped 370 containers of woody debris just from the McCall Fire Station location. At 25 cubic yards per container, it's almost 10,000 cubic yards or 800 dump truck loads of woody debris that's been hauled out here instead of burnt in and around the city. So it's been a very successful program. The city helps fund that program, and we appreciate the funding a lot because it certainly helps decrease burning. It decreases the amount of responses that we have to go out on. So it's been a really good program for Valley County and McCall.
Thanks for covering that, Garrett. Did you have anything else?
I don't. I can chime in with Stephanie, or she can chime in on this.
Let me quickly sweep through the council, see if they might have some questions for you on either the evacuation plan or woody debris. Tom, any thoughts or questions?
No, I don't have no questions. Good work. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Melanie?
Thanks for the information, Garrett. I'm curious because I've seen, not only seen it myself, but seen a lot of people having fears and conversations about people just recreationally burning in their yard, whether it be a fire pit or even outside of a pit. And I'd like if you could just talk to us about the rules of that right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Typically in McCall, we've always followed the state of Idaho's burn guidelines for open burning and campfires. And so the burn window is from May 10th to October 20th every year by Idaho state statute. And so if anybody burns open burning to dispose of debris, then they have to get a permit. That got shut down by the state, by Idaho Department of Lands, I want to say on June 30th, before the 4th of July, so that people can't do open burning. And then after the 4th of July holiday, usually on like the 7th or 8th, the state fire warden will evaluate the conditions and either open it up for permits or not. This year it didn't open back up, so we haven't issued any burn permits for open burning. The state never went into any kind of fire restrictions, level 1 or stage 2, stage 1 or stage 2 fire restrictions, which limits campfires or recreational burning, but it really limits them to, if we were in stage 1, it limits them to having to burn in an approved container basically on forest lands. The statute's written so that it's exempt from cities or municipalities. The McCall Fire Department's always followed the state's guidelines. And so when we're in that situation, we're really looking for an approved fire pit and that the fire meets the right size. This year, we've had a lot of burned complaints, burn barrels, smoke, and open burning, and we get on top of them. But a lot of times what we're looking for is safety. So we're looking for a 3-foot by 3-foot campfire ring on private property that's got rocks or steel around it. If people have a hose line and it's attended, and we deem it safe, then they can burn according to the current rules and regulations.
Okay, so what if there is no ring whatsoever and it's just on the ground?
If it's on private property and it's attended and they're using it for ceremonial or recreational purposes per the fire code, then they can do it if we're not in fire restrictions.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, Melanie. Mike?
I don't have any questions. Thanks.
Colby?
No questions. Nice work. And yeah, the fall's almost here. We'll be able to have some ceremonial fires with cold beverages or warm beverages.
Amen.
Garrett, this is Bob. Thanks for briefing us on the quantities. It's really impressive how much woody debris has been brought to your backyard, you might say, and sent off as opposed to being burned within the city. That's a big number. And I'm glad that the city has been a partner. And I know there's other folks helping with that as well. I think we're going to move into Stephanie's presentation next. Stephanie, welcome. thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thank you for having me. I am the sole proprietor of Wildfire Prevention Associates, and I manage the Valley County Firewise project for Valley County. And so I want to talk to you a little bit today because we are doing quite a few prevention projects, fuels removal around the city. And so I thought I'd show you that a little bit. Let me see if I can get the share up here working. And so I'll ask, can you see that image?
I cannot see any image on my screen. How about the rest of the group?
Not yet.
Okay, well, let's see if we can get that to work. Otherwise, I'm just going to have to do it with no pictures, but let's see. Let's see my entire screen. All right, let me see if this works. Can you see something now?
No, not yet.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything at all. Correct. Let's try that. How about that?
Nope.
It looks like you're not on video now, Stephanie.
Well, maybe that would help. Huh? Let's try it. See.
Actually, you don't
So-
have on video, Stephanie, this is Joe. If you try it, so you have that bar in the middle of your screen and it has the square with the little arrow in it.
Yes.
That's what you want to use to share your screen.
Right, which is what I did. So I'm opening that up and I'm telling it to share my entire screen. And so it's telling me that it's sharing. So not so much, huh?
Let's
Try choosing to share your desktop.
I did do
There
that.
you go.
Let's see if we can.
That
Does
works.
that look? All right. Okay. I think there might be, I actually am out in Roseberry. There might be a slight delay. Okay. So first of all, thanks for having me join in with Garrett. Garrett and I work closely on a lot of projects because we're both members of the Valley County Fire Working Group. And my job is prevention. So hopefully it's before we have fire. And as you all know, McCall is a recognized Firewise Communities USA, which is a great recognition. And the Fire Working Group and the McCall Firewise Committee and Garrett are a very important part of that and keeping that designation. And just so most of you are aware, we typically have a Wildfire Community Preparedness Day in May at the firehouse. We didn't get to have it this year, but we did a workshop with our fire group in February, and we worked with a lot of our different communities. And if you can see the little circle here in the map, compared to everybody else, these were the number of State Farm grant successes that we had. So we had a number of communities that qualified for a $500 grant, and they did some great community cleanup.
Stephanie, you're not coming through. I'm sorry. Your
Okay.
screen. Just, yeah, we still can't see your screen.
All right. Well, I'll stop that and I'll just talk to you then. How about that?
That's working great. Yeah, so far we're tracking you. You're keeping it real simple, so keep on rolling.
Okay. So I will do that then. We're doing quite a few projects in our community here in McCall. And one of the ways that we're making that work is through our community leader program. I learned a long time ago, I've been doing this since 2005, and I learned a long time ago that it doesn't work very well for me to just walk up and knock on doors. You know, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And so what I learned very quickly was it was great to have community leaders involved. And we've had some great ones. And community leaders or individuals in their neighborhoods that step up to be the ones, the point of contact, to gather and do some pre-education for neighbors so that they understand what mitigation programs are available, what grants are available, and what they can do even if there isn't any grant available. And we've had a lot of really great community leaders. Virginia Boydston was one of our early community leaders in rallying her neighborhood and wanting to do and contribute to mitigation and reduced fire risk. Connie Ickes, who was featured in the Outdoor Idaho production of Living with Wildfire, she actually went around and she knocked on doors. In her very, very demure voice, convinced an entire neighborhood to get involved with the mitigation project. Also the Noakes family, Dave Sorensen at Forest Trails, John Walker out at Quaker, and a number of other individuals that have made an important difference on how we communicate to neighborhoods that sometimes don't even know each other. They don't know who their neighbors are because maybe they're second homeowners. They come and they recreate alone. They don't really get together. And this has been a great way of actually introducing neighborhoods to the individuals that are living there, which is really a great solution when you do have to consider evacuation. Like Garrett reminded us, you know, be responsible for individuals in your community that might need a little extra help, but you got to know that first. So these fuel mitigation projects have been a great way of doing that. We've actually completed a number of projects in the McCall area already. We've been out at the Methodist Camp McCall. We've been on several Bear Basin road parcels. We've been at Quaker Hill, out on Boydston's property, the Stone property, the Collins Dardis property, Kings Pine 2. We've done work at the McCall Donnelly School District, Camp Pinewood, Camp Morrison, out around the lake. The Noakes family participated along with the Woodlands in quite a nice project over off of Spring Valley Road. And then we've done a lot of work out at Black Hawk Lake and around the area. And all of that's really added up to a big difference in the communities that have been impacted. But we're back in Bear Basin and we're doing work up at Meadow Lake. We're doing work in Forest Trails, and we're working on a number of larger 5 to 10 acre parcels in that impact zone, which is 1.5 miles from the Bear Basin management area. So I can't show you any pictures, but I can tell you that there has been there's just been a tremendous recognition by individuals that have participated in these projects. And it honestly has gotten a lot easier in the 15 years that I've been doing this, because people really are becoming better informed. And honestly, wildfires are increasing in size and number almost every year. They're saying we no longer have a fire season, we have a fire year. And they're starting earlier and sustaining later. And while we haven't been as dramatically impacted here in McCall, we certainly have had a lot of fires around us, and we're dealing with smoke that's coming out of these other areas. And so we really need to be on top of what we are looking at. We don't want to be another cautionary tale. We don't want to be another community that allowed fire to come in and decimate us. So I think that we've really groomed a very receptive community in terms of talking about wildfire. And the county has been willing to implement a 50-50 cost share woody debris bin program that's aligned right along with our Bring It, Don't Burn It. And that's really starting to get ahead of steam, where community members pull some money out of their own pocket. It's matched. Contractor brings in the bin, it's monitored, the debris is loaded, and it's taken out to the transfer station and into the Lake Fort yard. So we're getting a lot of fuels out of the community, and we're having a lot of individuals that are understanding what that's all about and wanting to be a part of it. So we're just taking our march. You know, we've done about 370 acres in the greater McCall area, and I think you'll have a lot of fun next time you wander out by Meadow Lake or into the Forest Trail subdivision, because we're making a significant difference. Happy to take any of you on a tour. that might like to see some of the work that's going on. So I'll stop there and ask if there's any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. I think a lot of us have seen those projects. Thanks for naming them and kind of giving us some guidance where they are. I'm going to ask for some words of encouragement, praise, thank yous, and then some questions from each of our council members. But you guys have done a great job on leading us through that. And it's really nice to hear that many of our community members in the subdivisions have taken on a leadership role to be proactive. Tom?
Yeah, thank you, and thank you all, and thank all the volunteers for all their hard work. It's immediately evident when you go through Meadow Lakes where you guys have been working, done a ton of work up there, and it's awesome. So thank you.
Melanie?
I agree with what Tom just said. I mean, it's very evident where you have all done your work, and it's impressive, and it certainly makes all of our community members feel just that much more safe knowing that, you know, we're taking care of the management of our treat areas. And thank you very much. I don't have any questions. I would like to take a tour. And thanks, Stephanie.
Good. Good.
Mike?
I don't have any questions, but all good information. Thank you very much.
Colby?
No real questions. I've seen a lot of the area that you've worked, and it's great that we have the community involvement and people are wanting to try to protect our community as best we can, being surrounded by trees. I did have one question I forgot to ask Garrett of when is the woody debris, the October woody debris start?
Good question, Colby. I've got the dates. Let me pull it up on my computer. Unless Stephanie's got
I
them off
would-
the top of her head.
Yeah. It's actually the 8th to the 20th of October.
Awesome. Thank you, Stephanie. I wanted to make sure I could pass it along to the neighbors and everyone that needs to know. That's great that it's happening 2 times a year. It's much more convenient.
Well, and just as a reminder, Colby, we actually do have the transfer site open during the traditional burn permit season, which is May 10th to October 20th. So while it's not conveniently in McCall, you can certainly take your trailer or truck of debris up to the transfer site during regular hours, free of charge.
Thank you. I think I've used that once or twice this summer.
Good.
Thank you, Council. This is Mayor Bob. Garrett, Stephanie, thanks a lot. Really, really helpful to us tonight. And I know the city has been, I know Jackie Amon, our previous mayor, has really been involved in helping with Firewise. We're very proud of all the accomplishments that the two of you have helped our town with. And keep up the good work. Thanks for joining us tonight. And thanks for a great presentation.
Thanks for having us on.
Yep. Have a good evening.
So that concludes our work session. We're going to move into the business agenda. The first thing we'll start with is Agenda Bill 20-266, and that is the McCall Golf Club Master Plan presentation and request to approve Resolution 20-21, which adopts the master plan for the golf course as our planning document.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Eric.
Okay, this is Eric McCormick with the golf course. I'd like to introduce tonight David Druzisky, who was hired last fall to work through the process for an asset management master plan. He was hired about this time last year, and he worked through last fall and then winter, and then again this summer met with the golf course advisory committee a couple times, the men's group, and some of the women's groups, and other influential golfers, and is here tonight to present his findings to the council. So with that, I'll turn it over to David.
Welcome, David. Look forward to hearing your discussion about our asset management plan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, City Council. Thanks for letting me join you this evening and talk about something that's, of course, I'm very passionate about, and hopefully I've got some golfing residents there on the council or visiting here tonight that will find at least this interesting and hopefully really productive. I think as Eric and Annette and those involved have found it to be. I've gone ahead and pushed my shared screen. Are you seeing that now?
We are.
Okay,
The first slide says Golf Course Asset Management Master Plan.
Great. So it's working good. I've got a hardwired deal here that's pretty fast at my place, so it should work pretty good. Fortunately, love the technology. First one of these I've done. So if I'm messing up or you can't hear me or something like that, please let me know. You guys have probably been doing it for what, 7 or 8 months now. So I'll give it a go. Actually, this is going to work out pretty good, I think. So yeah, as Eric said, for the last year or so, we've been working together on basically putting together a plan for the golf course. And I think the results you'll all find very interesting. I don't know if the plan and text document were fully distributed to all, and if you all have had an opportunity to read through it, but I'm just going to kind of hit the high points of that and kind of go through it. But here's the outline of what we'll do tonight. And Mayor, I think after each part, we can pause and see if there's any questions that the group wants to throw at me to keep them caught up and clarify anything that might come up. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. Good process.
Okay. Tell me to hurry up if I get too wordy. Sometimes I do. How much time do we have allocated for this?
Let's see. We have 1 hour allocated.
Okay, great. Yeah, we're going to do an introduction, which is pretty much going to spell out why, what, and who was involved, what we were up to for the last year. Then I think we'll move into part 2, which is basically the course assessment, and that's where I'll describe what's looked at as far as the golf course being an asset and all the things that we assess there. And then, of course, as a golf course architect, I take that opportunity to look at things related to the design of the golf course, its strengths, weaknesses, and mainly opportunities for the future. And then we'll move into the part 3, which will be the recommendations that I came up with, kind of on an individual whole basis with the plans, general recommendations, priorities, and then a little bit on costs. We'll proceed from there. So as far as introduction, Eric did a nice job there of describing what we were up to, but a lot of people don't understand what a master plan is for a golf course. And I think over the last 20 years, especially since the recession that we went through, we've all had to be a little bit more responsible with how we treat our golf courses and look at things more from a business standpoint. And in the case of a city-held asset, it's pretty much the way I look at the golf course, and staff has to, and hopefully you will too, beyond the recreational aspect of this. It's really an aging asset. And a lot of people take that for granted, I think, with golf courses, but it really is no different than, say, changing the HVAC system in the library or the roof on City Hall, or that, you've got a big project going on there now, but things get old on a golf course and they need to be addressed just as much like they do on anything else. And the good thing about these plans is that we're able to kind of collect our thoughts and put it all down on paper so that we can make sure that anything we do moving forward is seamless, works together. You're not doing any cart before the horse type activities, and it's in the best interest of everybody involved as a public entity. So that's really the key element here, is that we really want to base this effort in understanding the asset and what needs to be addressed that might be getting old, falling apart, or frankly, what's come along since this was built that's bigger, bolder, stronger, better, and how the market has changed. So it's more of a business process than it is a creative design process. I just sneak that fun stuff in at the tail end for consideration. I'm a golf course architect. That's all I do. I'm based down in Eagle. I used to be in Scottsdale. Started my own firm in 2006 after working for other national base architects, Robert Trent Jones, Bob Cupp, Keith Foster. I worked in golf course construction, and most importantly, is my dad is a golf course superintendent for many years. So I kind of grew up on golf courses, so I really understand their inner workings and what goes into the daily grind that is the golf environment for those that take care of it. So a lot of that is factored into this effort. The effort was a great team effort, as it always is in these cases. It takes a lot of people to put these things together, both for you to experience it and for me to assess it. And golf course superintendent is usually at the forefront of that. Eric and I spent a lot of time talking about things. We even had a great meeting along the process. I don't know if you read that in the text, but we got together. I can't remember. I think 4 or 5 of the past golf course superintendents going back to the 70s at the golf course, just to pick their brain to make sure we understood when everything was done on the golf course that may have been done during that time. And they all had a great time, I think, and so did I. But more importantly, we gleaned a lot of interesting information that was folded into the plan. So that was kind of fun. We all met down here at Banbury. It was the middle of last winter, something we could do in the off season. And of course, the Golf Advisory Committee board staff, we met as a group several times, snuck around the whole COVID issue as best we could, stayed away from each other, wore masks. I showed them what I was up to. I think that we got them on board and understanding what we were taking a look at in the bigger picture. We included an irrigation design consultant because irrigation systems are the single biggest dollar element on a golf course. They're complex, they're engineered based, and without an irrigation system, that golf course is dead come August. So that's a pretty important element. So we included him. But at the end of the day, I think what we all learned, what I mostly learned is, McCall Golf Club, it's a great place. It's beloved by the residents there. A lot of people down here in the valley, of course, know a lot about McCall Golf Club, all those great events you have up there, all the people that have houses that come up for the season. It's a big part of the culture there, and I think down here as well. So it's been a pleasure to be able to help you guys put together, something you can use as a tool moving forward. It's just a nice place. It's old, which has its pros and cons. One is that it has great heritage. I can't believe how old the golf course is. And that brings, like I said, some challenges that we'll have to address over time, i.e. with stuff aging out or well exceeding its life cycle, which we'll get into. So that's pretty much my introductory process there. Has anybody got any questions related to those generalities?
I'll quickly sweep the council. Tom, any questions?
None yet.
Melanie?
No, thank you.
Mike?
No questions, thanks.
Colby?
Not so far.
This is Mayor Bob. We're good to go to the next section. Thank you, Dave.
Yeah, golf course assessment. So in all of these master plan efforts, and I work with private clubs, public facilities, daily fees, resorts. Every golf course is a little different, has a different purpose. But this process is pretty similar to pretty much every client that I work with. And the first step is always me spending time on the golf course, making sure I know it and understand it and see how people use and enjoy it or not. And in this particular endeavor, the focus we knew was going to be on the aging asset aspect of the golf course. So spending time on the golf course is first and foremost. We got started a little bit less than a year ago, so we quickly ran into weather that discounted that ability. The good thing is I've been there numerous times before, so I could start formulating just stuff mentally. We had our meeting with the superintendents, a lot of discussions, between Eric and I, but I really didn't get out on the golf course until this spring. We had a pretty easy, simple spring as far as not a lot of snow out there at the time. So I was able to get out there and spent numerous visits, just time on the golf course. And that allowed me to really ascertain what we're working with there. And so when we do that, there's the 2 areas of primary study, and that's the aging asset, as I mentioned, and then I usually fold in at the end the design study. And me spending time on the aging asset also allows me to start getting a better idea of design aspects of the golf course. And this is important because at the end of the day, those are the 2 areas that really go into making the golf course, the golfing experience, the customer experience, what it should be, which is fun. And people underestimate how aspects of each of those might impact that experience. And at the end of the day, that's really important so that you guys can maintain your market share and revenue projections and things like that. But again, the most important thing, I'm not here to make the golf course more difficult, more challenging, whatever. There's a lot that goes into a golfing experience, but most importantly, at the end of the day, they're supposed to have fun. So hopefully people understand that I'm not here to a lot of times people get a little nervous when a golf course architect shows up thinking we're just going to add a bunch of bunkers and things like that. But no, at the end of the day, we're just going to make sure the golf course is as fun as it can be, while at the same time being responsible. And that little thing there at the bottom, rounds revenue minus the costs equals profit or loss. Everything is based on that basic understanding. It's really simple with a golf course. You bring in money based on the number of rounds you sell. You take away costs, which is Eric and the pro shop and all those other things, insurance, whatever else might be that Annette and Eric manage and the golf shop. And that equals your profit or loss for the golf course. Golf is usually a pretty narrow margin business one way or the other. The key is trying to make sure for a city facility that you're at least running black, and if not, making a little bit money so you can put some money aside in a slush fund for future improvements. So, but this is the same formula for every facility in the country, no matter if it's a private club, a public facility, a hotel, whatever. There's other things that'll impact that. If a developer is building a golf course, he can kind of forgive some of the expenses because he's selling lots. Well, you don't have that situation. You just make sure that you're running lean and mean. And there's a lot of things that impact that. And we can affect mostly the costs and rounds revenue. It can be more difficult, but more importantly, if we make the golf course fun and a good experience, that rounds revenue thing will take care of itself. So we'll do the best we can to make sure we always come back to this formula as our basis for what we recommend and what we do. So yeah, like I said, I spent a lot of time on the golf course. First, I assessed things from an asset standpoint, and really all I'm doing is looking at all the features of the golf course. And you can quickly run through. If you play golf, you understand what those might be. You've got greens, you've got tees, bunkers, irrigation system's a big one, paths, the drainage systems, grasses, tees, structures. All these things age, and there's specific life cycles that these things go through, specifically in regards to how Mother Nature might be affecting these, or the amount of play that you have. For instance, on the irrigation system, that's probably the most rigid engineering-based system or component of a golf course, but it has a very specific life based on the life expectancy of pipe in the ground and how well it was installed. And then you have also components in the irrigation system that are sitting above ground that are exposed to the environment, like the heads and the irrigation controllers and valves and things like that. They might age at a different rate. And then, of course, you've got the pump stations, you got main lines, all sorts of stuff related to the irrigation system that have very specific timeframes. And what happens with those is that as those get older, the time required by Eric and his staff and the parts required in the repair process with those every year increases slowly. And sure enough, when you're year 20 or 25, you're spending $100,000 a year just maintaining an irrigation system. So we have to understand where we're at on that. Bunkers on the golf course, you have very few bunkers out there, none on Aspen and Birch, but the few that you have, I think 10 on Cedar. Believe it or not, they're 25 years old. So it's time to assess those and probably do a little refurbishment on that. You can see it if you look at them. The grasses, we're every 15, 20 years, we seem to go through a new generation of grass types. Ryegrass and bluegrass is not the old common Kentucky bluegrass that many of us remember from 30, 40 years ago. It's quite different. Lower mowing heights, the ability to handle drought, the ability to handle stresses. Those kind of things make a big difference on a golf course when you're talking about inputs and costs of fertilizer and herbicides, insecticides, fungicides, those kind of things. New grass types are able to offset a lot of those kind of costs. Of course, trees grow. Sometimes they grow where you don't want them to. Sometimes they die. And in our case, we've got some issues with structure. So all those things are assessed and they age. So we need to understand where we're at with those elements. We have tools to help us understand where we might be with the age, and somebody has to define how long these things last. Well, about 20 years ago, finally through our American Society of Golf Course Architects, which I'm a member of, we put together this chart, got the blessing of all those groups you see on the bottom there, from the USGA, the PGA, the Golf Course Owners Association, Builders Association, National Golf Foundation, Club Managers Association, all signed off on this, agreeing that these are some basic timelines for how long these things last. Where this comes from is, we, superintendents, myself, we would go into meetings and say, hey, you need to replace all these things, they're old. And people are like, well, what do you mean? It looks great, right? We're playing golf and it seems to be fine with us. Why do we need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on these things? And so we needed some tools that helped everybody understand that, look, this is a business and we need some data, and that's what this is supplying. But we refer back to this kind of document amongst other just experiences to make sure that we have something to support some of our conclusions in this regard. So what I do is after spending time and understand how, when we first built, or when elements were last built or first built, basically the last time they were built on the golf course, compared to what their life cycle is, I can create these fancy dancy charts that are pretty much spell it out for people. It's pretty interesting. For years we would just roll into meetings and say, hey, all these things are old, need to be addressed. But until we started doing things like this, people didn't really respect just the opinion. But I think you put something on paper like this, it really is easy to understand where you're at with some of these elements. What you're seeing there in the bars, on the far left are all the line items on the golf course. The colorful bars is green, of course, is brand new. Over a course of years, which are spelled out on the bottom, it turns, average yellow, and then it turns into the red, which is the end of its life cycle. And then, of course, the little gray bars on the right are where this golf course is specifically at with those elements. I broke these charts down into 3 different age groups for the golf course. This particular chart are the 1928 original golf holes for the golf course. There's another one of these that shows the 1968 holes. And then, of course, the last one I'll show you is the cedar. It's quite different than this. But you can see that with the passing of time, many of these key elements are far exceeding what you would typically say is a standard life cycle for the golf course. Now, many will say, well, the golf course is only open 4 or 5 months out of the year. Don't we get a little credit for that? Well, you would, except that you're pounding a lot of people through that golf course in that short period of time, and you're also beating it up with a pretty severe winter every year. So that Mother Nature has also some say in this as far as the aging. So it kind of balances out. Superintendents do a wonderful job of using baling wire and of course duct tape every year to just get through a season. And in places like this where it is a short season, you kind of get through the season and you kind of take a breath and say, okay, we can kind of let it rest a little bit now. But I guarantee you, come every August, September, as things start drying out up there, areas of the golf course are definitely showing some stress just simply based on an ineffective irrigation system on places like the Cedar, and other stresses start showing up. So if you were to run through these, you can see we're pretty far on the right. The irrigation numbers aren't too bad because that, of course, was replaced in the mid-90s. But guess what, folks? Mid-90s is already 25 years away. So we're approaching that 30-year mark where a lot of things are approaching that first need of reassessment, especially if they're showing any sort of issues. There's, of course, no bunkers, so there's no line item for bunkers. But tees, for instance, you got structure for tee and you have tee surfaces. Tee surfaces, pretty common sense. They wear out with all the wear and tear. Each year they might get a little beat up and they get bumpy. And you've got a lot of unlevel tees on the golf course just simply from all that use. There's only so much that general maintenance can address with that kind of wear and tear. They do a good job of getting it through with that wear and tear, but it all kind of compounds itself over time and things just get worse as they go. You know, it is like with a puddle on a street. Once a puddle's there, the puddle gets worse. It's the same thing with things like that. And then if you look at tee structure, that's more this physical structure of the entire tee itself. Through time, erosion occurs just like it does on everything else out in the environment. So things start kind of collapsing, rolling off on the edges, losing its shape, those kind of things. So tee structure is a little different. You can see with the time frame versus the tee surfaces. You might resurface and level a tee every 15 to 16 years, but you might not rebuild them, but every other time, is what that's saying. Green surfaces, is a very specific thing, mainly because a lot of new grasses come out, new grass types that golfers, once they experience it somewhere else and everybody else starts changing to them, it pretty much becomes the market standard that golfers expect. That's also easier to maintain, more resilient. So green surfaces get redone simply for that reason. But they also wear out. POA infestation over time takes over invasive species, and conditions start going to pot. So those need to be readdressed. And then every other second or third time you do that, you might have to completely rebuild them, because greens today are built to USGA standards so that you can guarantee consistency throughout the golf course with a profile that drains evenly and contains and holds moisture and inputs that you put onto it, fertilizer and stuff. The challenge here at McCall Golf Club on the 18 older holes is that they were all built at different times and with different specification. So the challenge to the staff is that it's very difficult to create consistency green to green coming out of winter, especially. And then that impacts the golfing experience, because golf is all about consistency more so than it is difficulty or you know, for instance, if everything is a little wet one day, that's fine. Golfers know what to expect. But if one area is wet and one area is dry, then that's the problem. So it's not always having great conditions, highly manicured. It's having consistent conditions, and that's very, very difficult to do with these very important areas of greens if they're not built the same way. And a lot of inefficiencies just build up as far as how to maintain that. Cart bridges on the golf course, on both of those nines, crossing the creek, are a big problem. There's a lot, all of them basically need to be rebuilt. They're kind of a combination of culverts and bridges, and that it's, you know, they're wood structures. So of course, in that environment, they're going to dilapidate over time. And they're at that point. Eric knows that. We talked about it a lot, and that's something that I believe he's going to try to address to some extent with you all's blessing and Annette's guidance probably this winter, but that needs to be addressed right away. And then the rest of these, you know, bar graphs, you'll see how I fold those into my recommendations at the very end. So that compared to, here's the Cedar 9. You can see that golf course is, you know, is much newer, but it's still getting to the point where you're at 25, 26, whatever it is, years old. You know, it was built a couple years before the irrigation system was put in on the other 18, and it's right at that 27, I think, years old time frame. And all of those bars are approaching that first big milestone in terms of assessing whether or not we need to start doing some things. Some of these are big projects. Some of these are fairly small. You know, addressing the bunkers, since there's only a few, is not a big deal, but it should be done. Green surfaces, that's always debatable because you also have to match the other greens. So you probably won't do anything on those until you do the other greens. But after 25 years or so, what was put out there is no longer is out there. So all these things are pretty relevant at this point, but you can see the difference just between the 36 holes and this newer 9. I identified some stuff with lakes, but that's a level of detail you just have to get into at a later point. You can really dive into the specific needs of each individual lake out there. They're pretty much just holes in the ground that fill up with water, and it's really hard to put a whole lot of value on worrying about that at this point. Why these are important, why aging on a golf course is a big deal, since it's an asset. Well, it has considerable impacts, mainly on the maintenance efficiency and ability to take care of the golf course. As if you go back to our formula at the beginning of making sure you're the ability to reduce costs and at the same time provide a good golfing experience, old dilapidated elements don't do either of those areas any sort of good. So, you know, labor costs are going up. That's something that we all have to be watching. You know, I work with some clubs over on the coast in both California and Washington. They're at $15 an hour. Their costs went through the roof just in, you know, overnight. And so we've had to find a lot of ways to reduce turf area and things like that. And frankly, rates have to go up. And if that's what has to happen, that's what has to happen. It's just math. So as labor costs go up, we got to find ways to reduce labor. And a lot of what we go through is pretty much that. Like I said before, if you're spending $150,000, $100,000 a year trying to paste together an old irrigation system, you know, what else could that labor be doing in addition to not spending that money? They could be maintaining bunkers or edging grass or whatever it might be. So there's some real important things to consider here in regard to that. And a lot of the work therefore becomes ineffective out there for the folks maintaining it. And I got some pictures here I'll show you in a minute of some of those areas. And at the end of the day, again, it gets back to the golfer experience. If they're seeing these things, that's not a good deal. And it, you know, like everything else, expectations are rising. They may not want to pay a whole lot more, but their expectations are rising because other places have got new, bigger, bolder, stronger elements that have become the standard in the industry and their experiences. So we need to make sure we're ahead of that and on top of that as best we can. And of course, safety, that gets back to those bridges and culverts. You know, we need to be really careful as far as those that are in charge of making sure the asset is safe. Those things, you know, should take the forefront. They're not real sexy items, but they need to be addressed. And then, of course, revenue impact. All this gets back to revenue, right? If people stop going to McCall Golf Club and out to Jug Mountain instead because it's a little newer, well, that's going to affect revenue. And or if Eric's got to spend an extra $200,000 pacing the pump station or irrigation system together, then guess what? We're not putting money aside for other more fun projects in the future. And I apologize to Eric. I always hate showing pictures of stuff that I pick up on, and none of this is staff's fault or anything like that. But these are the things that I quickly see as a new fresh eyes that it's easy to ascertain that we need to address. You know, so over here on the far left, and again here on the bottom, these are areas along cart paths that golfers stop either for the green or tee. And these old railroad ties that were used for traffic control and curbing, imagine what a mower has to do or an edger to get around all of these elements. You have to go around it, stop. Somebody has to edge these things. In this case down here, there's no need for this wall. This slope could just taper down towards this rock, and this whole area, and as well as this area, a mower could just sweep right through there and not be slowed down, paused, you know, run through an obstacle course. Basically becomes much more efficient, quicker through that area, cleaner look, all those kind of things. These are the kind of things we have to start weaning out of the golf course to reduce those labor times. This over here is an example of a tee slope. These are where erosion starts happening and the structure of tees starts breaking down because they're so steep. People traverse these steep slopes. I don't do things this steep. People can slip on that and or hard to traverse. So these kind of things need to be addressed. It'll be much easier to mow these as well. Cart paths are you know, asphalt cart path. It ages. I mean, just like our roads do that you guys have to take care of. Well, on the golf course, well, they're not even as built as well as the roads. So you can imagine over time with freeze and thaw, Mother Nature doing her thing. And remember, golf courses are watered almost, you know, every other day. So you're also getting that wet heat, wet heat, wet heat thing throughout the summer, which has a lot of wear and tear on things like wood, asphalt, concrete. Well, you're seeing it here in the condition of some of the asphalt out there throughout the golf course. If you take a close look as you go, some areas are worse than others. We're at the point where we can't just put another layer on top of this. I'll be suggesting that this all be ground up in place and used as base material with a new full layer going on top of that that'll last much longer and be worth the effort. And then when you get into the bridges and culvert crossings, here's some examples of things that I saw out there. Every one of the culverts is pretty much like this, and the bridges are starting to look like this. You know, we need to shore those up, fix them. And I think Eric and I talked about they're probably at the point where they just simply need to be replaced. Pull these out, drop in some free span, simple timber bridges with proper safety, retaining rails on the sides throughout the golf course. There's also player walk bridges over the creek in a couple spots that are just, of course, narrower versions of what we're seeing here on the top right. And then, of course, the bunkers on the Cedar. This is what starts happening 20 years into their existence. I guarantee you the sand was up higher on the slope, probably farther back over here originally. They just slowly creep in to the point where it's just hard to maintain these anymore. You don't know where the sand line needs to be. The depth of sand is probably uneven throughout because Eric has probably had to add a little sand here and there over time. We've also learned a lot about bunker maintenance. Actually, bunker maintenance has become the most expensive element on golf courses. So I have to be very careful about suggesting adding bunkers anymore on golf courses. They're just too expensive. and they're a hazard. They're a frustrating element to a lot of people, but they're also what creates interest. So we have to be very thrifty of what we do here. So we're building them better with liner material underneath the sand, because these sands that we put in bunkers now, of course, like every other material in construction, the price of that's going through the roof. You know, we're at $85 a ton versus $25 a ton, big difference. So we're doing some things to preserve that sand instead of just letting it commingle with dirt underneath. We're putting a liner material underneath the sand to protect it, better drainage, and a type and style of edge that's easy to maintain. So those need to be addressed as well. After, of course, assessing things from an asset standpoint, just their physical structure, I then start weaning myself into looking at things from a design standpoint. I start with the game attributes, which is, you know, of course, my forte as a golf course architect. There's specific things that go into the game that have to be factored into a good golf course. Playability is one that a lot of people toss around. That's not how easy a golf course is. That's strictly the ability of all levels of players to get out of their experience what they want to get out of it. If somebody wants to challenge the golf course, so be it. Let them challenge it. They should have some opportunities to do that and maybe score risk reward type scenarios. But if somebody even needs to be conservative, just make their way around the golf course, they can't be facing any undue penalty, things they cannot negotiate. So I always look at things from a playability standpoint first. That's a really, really good one to make sure you've got covered. For the better players, things like resistance to scoring to make sure they can't tear something up. That's a little harder these days, especially on a public golf course. The better players are just so much better than most players. You can see it. Look what happened at the U.S. Open this last weekend. Just overpowering a golf course that would just tear all of us up. Otherwise, those players are. Not that we ever do any of this work for a tour player level, but there are some good players that come up for some of your events. So I just need to kind of make sure that that's taken care of. Shot value is always something to make sure what that means is that I've got some shots going different directions, different lengths, all those kind of things. There's some variety there. Strategy is what makes things fun, that you got to think about some things. Variety, make sure there's some variety in the golf course, that not everything's the same. And of course, the routing, which is the heart and soul of a golf course, you know, how the golf holes come together. All those things I kind of take a look at and factor in, not real specifically, but just in whatever recommendations I make to make some adjustments or enhancements to the golf hole. I think you're all, as a public golf course, it's an easier golf course. It's fairly straightforward. There's not a lot of penal elements out there that could be frustrating, which is important to keep play moving. And all that is very, very conducive to a nice public facility. I concern myself with, and I got to find some ways, and I did it in the master plan, to maybe create a little bit more interest, maybe on the original 36 holes, to keep people's attention, not necessarily make it harder, but just maybe a little bit more interesting. So that's kind of important to me. And those things I can just factor in when we're addressing things that need to be fixed or improved upon as these things age. Length and yardage. This has become a really, really important aspect of all golf courses. The demographics of the game have changed, of course, significantly in the past 30 or 40 years. When this golf course was originally built, you probably had two tee yardages that were of concern, metal and championship play. It was basically the people that knew how to play the game and people that were beginning. Women weren't factored in, kids weren't factored in so much. It was pretty straightforward. Well, with the expanded demographics, everybody's playing golf. We need to make sure that everybody has the appropriate yardage and available golf course for them. And that's really important from a market standpoint, because if certain groups of people, i.e. the ladies, don't feel that they have a course setup that's conducive to their abilities, they're going to go find, ladies' day somewhere else. So we're doing a lot of work around the entire country with just making sure tee setup is correct, mostly on the front end, meaning we got to have tees down at 4,500, 4,800 yards, and then ranging all the way up as far as you can get. In the 7,000 range is probably the least important anymore. It really is in that 6,000 range for the men and standard competitive play, better ladies, the youth, that kind of stuff. And then we work our way down for seniors, ladies, beginners, all that kind of stuff, down into that 4,500 yard range. The scorecard itself right now, the numbers aren't too bad. but it's cheated a little bit in terms of the physical tees out there. They just don't exist on the older golf course. And some of them on the Cedar, though the golf course is only 20-something years old, they're not quite forward enough. So we need to address that. And I think there's been a lot of discussion about that in the advisory group anyway. Course assessment design, course features. You know, I look at greens, tees, bunkers, paths, all those other elements like we did before, strictly from a design standpoint. The greens on the golf course, especially the old ones, are too small. That's compounded by the realization that there's a lot of unusable slope areas within the greens, which is very typical to older golf courses. What has happened is back when the old golf courses were built, the greens would be pretty steep because the greens would only what we call stimp, i.e. mowed low, so that they only rolled what we called at about 6 or 7 on the stimp meter, maybe up to 8. And that allowed slopes within the greens to be steeper because the ball would still probably stop, right? Well, now you're lucky to get down below 9, and most golfers want above 9 on the stimp meters. That's just the market. And those steep areas have become an issue, and you just can't put a pin on. And when you can't put a pin on extensive amounts of area, and you've got a lot of areas out there, I'd say 20%, 30% on some golf holes that are unusable, and the greens already being only averaging about 4,000, 4,200 square feet in size, you're limited in where all the wear and tear is on the golf on the green, and that's an issue. Plus, it creates lack of interest, and it's unfair. The last thing you want to do is have to putt down that slope or across it. So that's probably the biggest from a design weakness standpoint. The greens have those big areas of unusable area, compounded by the fact that they're small, and then they're inconsistent because they're inconsistently built. So there's definitely some issues with the greens from a design standpoint as well as an asset standpoint. The tees, as I mentioned, we mainly need to add some from the front, maybe shift some around just to create some better angles. You'll see that in the master plan. The bunkers, there are none, of course, on the original 36 holes, and there probably should be a few at least to help tie the 36, all the golf, the 27 holes together. So I'm introducing a few bunkers in the fairways primarily, and the master plan to be done maybe someday. And they need to be simple and straightforward and nice, and the bunkers add some interest. So that's pretty important from a design standpoint. And then, you know, paths, make sure they're not in play. All the structures, again, what do they look like? Can we do something better? And then landscape and trees. Trees tend to be overvalued. We're busy taking a lot of trees out of golf courses around the country from a golfing standpoint as well as a health of the turf standpoint. They're just not necessary in a lot of areas. I've got a couple specific locations where I think trees could go out. I'll show in the master plan. And then some of the design traits I use, just to mention, I use things like any other architect would use: scale, character, and styling. It's a big one for me. Texture, all those kind of things go into whatever I might be recommending at a higher level from a design standpoint. Really important to make sure all those things come together. You as an individual don't know those things go in, but a good golf course, those things are there's value put on those elements. So with that, that's pretty much how I wrap up the aspects of assessing the golf course, both from an asset standpoint and design standpoint. So I'll throw it. We'll pause there if there's any questions. I ran through something that's pretty important pretty quick. So if there's anything you want me to clarify here, let's take this chance to do that now.
Well, David, I think that's pretty clear. And in the interest of time,
okay,
I think we're all excited about hearing part 3 recommendations. Let's roll into that.
Okay, good. So I tend to break recommendations down. I start out with general recommendations because they're things that will apply throughout the whole golf course, right? You have 18 holes. So if something's going on every hole, more than likely on a lot of these things, mainly because you can't just often look at an individual hole and do some work and move on. Things have to come together. I always use the analogy, you know, if you change one chapter in a book, you think the book's the same? Probably not. So you have to be really careful about looking things in a small manner first. So we'll start with general recommendations. As I mentioned before, from a responsibility standpoint, I'm recommending that all the culvert crossings and bridges be replaced or repaired. Pretty straightforward. The next thing I'd like to see done is we probably could quickly renovate the bunkers on the Cedar, since there's so few of them, and give something for both the players to enjoy a little bit better, because I'm not just replacing what's there. I'm kind of shifting them around, make some recommendations for changing a little bit so they're better. But more importantly, so Eric and staff has something more effective to maintain and provide the golfers. They're pretty tough, they're pretty rough, and it's time to do that. And again, there's so few of them that shouldn't be too big of a project. And then while we're doing that, I think to help tie the old course together and the new course and to create some interest, I'm suggesting, well, we might as well take a look at the older holes and maybe add a few bunkers out there, probably in the fairways at first. The fairway bunkering is something I found a little bit more valuable than greenside bunkering, because those are the bunkers that I can put out at 250 yards out or more, where the better, longer players have to worry about them, but most of the other people don't from a play standpoint, but we all get to enjoy them aesthetically, visually. So there's some things we can do there, I think, to create some interest on the older holes and tie the newer 9 together with the old holes a little bit better. And that wouldn't be too difficult. Good thing to do along with the renovation of the cedar bunkers. The big talking item, like I said, the advisory committee, I totally wholeheartedly agree, is physically building some silver and gold tees. And it sounds like a Christmas show that used silver and gold, but we need to build physically the tees out there to show that demographic. There's a commitment by the McCall Golf Club to taking care of that group of players so they can enjoy their game. And what else that does is it alleviates some of the pressure on the other tees, because everybody's being pushed back, and defines those a little bit better. So that has a domino effect throughout the golf course. Many of the remaining tees, they're at that age, they just need to be leveled. And in that process, a few could be adjusted. So I'm suggesting that maybe to coincide with the addition of the other tees. So I think you've got a really nice comprehensive tee project after some of these other smaller things happen first. That would go a long way of really setting up the golf course property for the future to make sure it's set up for all that. And then I think we follow and start looking. I know other folks on the committee or the advisory committee are always looking at green improvements, and I get that, and I definitely can see that now that I know there's some really steep, troublesome areas, and a lot of them are small. So there's definitely the opportunity to make some vast improvements to the golf course overall, with improvements to the greens on Aspen and Birch, and to get them consistent throughout the golf course. I think they'd have a much better chance coming out of winter if we were able to do, modernize those with less conflict. So that's an important thing, but it's also very expensive and very invasive. So that's a tougher one to get your head around, but they're there. It's something that needs to be considered. Of course, the asphalt cart paths, I put the word program on the in there because I think Eric and I talked about this. You could probably enter into some sort of program where you're just doing 4 or 6 holes every off season, just bite off a little at a time, make your way through, do it kind of like the streets are done, a little bit here and there. And like I said, what we would do is we'd have them come in with a small grinder, grind up what's there, leave it in place, maybe take a little bit of it away and use it as base material to lay down a new layer. That way we're being good for the environment and not creating a bunch of waste. And after that, it's unfortunately time to start looking at a new irrigation system on the Cedar course and the practice range. They are very poorly designed, unfortunately. Eric and the staff have had to add a bunch of stuff, and that always is tough because it instantly is in conflict with the hydraulic engineering of the system. And sure enough, there's bad distribution out there. Houses are getting wet. It's just not a good thing. And it's this time of year usually where that starts showing up. So that needs to be addressed. It's just old at this point too. So that's another big one. And that's not a real fun one because it's underground and people don't realize it, but that's just one of those nuts and bolts things of a golf course that has to be done when it has to be done. And those prices are going up fast, because it's petroleum based and probably the most materials based element on a golf course where you're subject to material increases. And then after that, there's a few sub drainage places where they've got problematic drainage. We can add some sub drainage. It gets a little wet in the spring. We can hurry up some of that water off the golf course on the side of 9. The range tee is really small and it easily gets overwhelmed. So I think we can put a really good artificial turf line at the back to help absorb some of that traffic. Those have gotten really good. And then optional design enhancements, which you'll see in the master plan hole by hole in a couple key areas. So with that, I'll switch over to the plan, the master plan for the golf course. I'll zoom in as we go. Everybody see that too?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So here's the entire golf course. North is up. The various charts are the scorecards and the impact of the work in terms of its impact on the areas of the golf course that are all broken down into areas, whether it's greens, tees, bunkers, whatever, the sizes of everything. For instance, when I look at the total area of tees on the golf course, it's very small. Aspen, the first column, 28,000, averaging 3,100 square feet per hole. That's almost 40% too small. And it's mainly because you don't have forward tees, so it's pretty easy for me to introduce those tees, jump it up to almost 5,000 square foot average, and then you end up with about 45,000 square feet per 9, which is conducive to spreading out wear and tear, in addition to making sure all the golfers have the right amount of options off the tee. Same with the greens on these older holes, averaging 3,500 square feet. Are you kidding me? So, and then you take away another 15-20% because a lot of those is unusable area. These are tiny. So when we do get a chance to rebuild greens, those need to be bumped up in size. And you can see the difference between the Aspen and Birch compared to those numbers on the Cedar. Significantly different. Well, Cedar is just a more modern design by a modern golf course architect, and he got those base things about where they needed to be. So those numbers are more.
David, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the screen is not showing whatever charts or drawings you're referring to.
Okay. Can you see my plan? Did you see the plan I was showing?
Well, it shows the icon for or the logo and the word plans, but I don't see any other graphics.
Oh, it didn't pop over? Okay.
Unless it's just my computer. I don't know if.
No, we're all having that trouble. It just says McCall Golf Club plans, and that's it.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and
I went over to just Adobe Acrobat. I thought it might fall. Oh, let me see. Hold on. I think I can select.
Thank you for checking that.
Yeah, rookie mistake.
You could probably move Acrobat onto your other screen and it'll show it to us.
No, it's over top the old one. There was a thing at the very beginning that let me pick what it wanted. Where'd it go?
So you're sharing just the plans. You're not sharing your screen. So if you stop sharing, you should be able to re-choose, if you will, sharing your desktop, in which case it will show you anything that you.
Oh yeah, there it is. You got it. I got it. Okay. How's that?
Now we can see. Oh, it went away.
Oh, really?
It was there for a split second.
Okay. Here it comes.
There you go.
Yeah, sorry about that. So right here, see these three scorecards? I mean, area charts right in the middle?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was talking about. The left columns on these top two are your tees. So 28,000 compared to recommended 44,000 on Aspen, 27,000 existing to almost 40,000 on Birch, and then compare those to existing already on Cedar at 44,000. It jumps up to 60 simply because we've got some missing gaps of tees that I'm introducing tees, including some forward ones. So that gets the increase still, just to make fill in some of the blanks and keeping the old ones. So these are a good example of showing you what you've got versus what's proposed, more standard, what we typically require on a golf course with the kind of rounds that you're getting. Tiny, tiny greens over here on this side, 3,500 square feet, 4,000 square feet. So we need to get those up a little bit more reasonable and get rid of some of those steep areas on the golf course. So I'll jump on over, quickly go through some of the holes here, starting with A, makes sense, right? So we're going to work north out of the clubhouse. Aspen 1, not much going on there. You can see the two new forward tees here that I'm circling with my cursor right now. The dashes in the existing tees means level those tees. These represent new tees. And then I took a stab at just a quick representation of if a new greens complex were to be built, new green, that this is an indication that this is where it would go, roughly the same spot, maybe a little different orientation, but no real concentration of some sort of specific design there. That's just representation of a new greens complex there. So, you know, Aspen 1 is generally not a lot going. It's a nice, straightforward, simple starting hole, shorter, not a lot of penal elements there. There's some issues, of course, over on Aspen 2 with the cart path. Tees are very much undersized, especially on these par 3s. So I'm working here to introduce new forward tees, alleviate some of the pressure on the back tees. The back tees need to be leveled. Let's move this path away from right in front of the tees. If we're going to redo the paths, let's go ahead and move this one over. There's some drainage here where these blue hash marks are that should be addressed at some point. But mostly the work on this hole is down here. And then at the greens complex, I'm recommending this is a green where we could definitely use a left green side bunker, remove this tree that's really hanging close to the green and is problematic, and replace that with a bunker on the left of that green if we so choose to do that. So that's Aspen 2. Aspen 3 and 4 are very nice golf holes, very straightforward, attractive. They go back through the trees, dog legging around, nice yardage. So I'm just showing some tee improvements on both holes there. You know, mostly getting this forward tee in. Little tricks of the trade, incorporating that forward tee. Probably it's still built up just ever so slightly, not the usual 2 feet up kind of thing, tee box, but you know, it's just integrated into the fairway mowing, but it's defined versus just being a couple markers on uneven ground out there right now. So those will be nice improvements and really simple, straightforward things to do. Jumping over to 5, you know, it's a well understood, well known golf hole. It's a little bit awkward strictly from a design standpoint, but it's exciting. It's very, very difficult up here with some kind of forced hazard carries that I tend not to like to do, especially at a public golf course. So after some tee work here, just straightening some things out, expanding these narrow tees in the back, maybe addressing some of the shape of the fairway, expanding out a little bit closer to the creek. We get up to this area up here. I'm suggesting we remove the cart traffic from this side of the creek at that far fairway here, keep everybody outside there, add a little player walk ridge, because this is just getting torn up because it's so focused coming off this bridge and over this bridge that we just need to let this be a little bit simpler. Leave a bridge for maintenance access, but this just needs to be simplified. Move the path away because a lot of balls end up along that path. Sometimes paths can be in conflict with the play, and I prefer to let play rule the day on that by taking out a path. You still have the path to the right. Fix the bridges. And then here I'm suggesting we go ahead and culvert pipe a section of the creek on the far right to allow those people that can't carry that to have a route to the green without being challenged with that. Better players are still going to want to hit into the green, so that doesn't affect them at all. But we'll go ahead and blow out the creek a little wider here to more of a pond type feature so you can actually see it and improve those grades around there. It'll be much more attractive, but yet kind of still doing the same thing. So that's kind of the hope for that long term. Kind of fun, exciting work there. This entire area is a really busy congregation of things going on. And I have another diagram I'll show you after this. We'll really focus on this. So after 5, you know, you kind of go through this funky menagerie of paths and you end up over here on 6. You kind of go in harm's way from people playing Aspen 8. So you got to be careful there. I mean, Birch 7. So you have to be careful there. So I'm kind of reconfiguring that path so it doesn't come so close to the line of play on 7 over here. I'm quickly taking the golfers over to get them out of harm's way and adjusting the path, the tees accordingly. Those need to be fixed anyway, sliding them to the left as best we can to kind of improve this dog leg. Little tree over here probably needs to be taken out before it comes a big tree. And then let's get this new forward tee up here and a new path here again, so that if players are using this path, they're not coming into play from Birch 6, again, improving safety there a little bit as well, and some better separation from this conflict that currently exists. So as you play up 6 green is the one green I think I heard most out of, well, 2 greens, this one and another one from the advisory committee saying, yeah, this one needs attention. It doesn't really work. And it definitely is tiny. It's kind of jammed back in the corner over there. I think we need to pull that out. And in doing that, I'm adding a bunker on the right side. It's a shorter hole. It can be really, really attractive back there. It just needs to be placed in the open area between the left side and where it currently sits. Playing on to Aspen 7, again, new forward tees, adjustment to the fairway line. More importantly, it's a very, very short par 4, so I'm not piping this, but it's an exciting little golf hole. But even more so, if we can move this green back towards the creek. The creek here is expanded a little bit to a green, create more of a pondy type creek feature, so it can be seen better from afar and better just overall vibe to it over time. So really nice perch green along there with a little approach fairway. The longer hitters will actually consider driving that creek, which will be really, really fun for that demographic, those folks to do that. Otherwise, it's just a much better deal. The most important reason I'm doing it is I'm moving it away from all this other congestion to free up some space, which I'll show a little more specifically here in a minute. Then you jump over to 8, go around par 3, 8, expanding these tees to make it a little bit more conducive to managing wear and tear, new forward tee. And then the green on 8, I'm suggesting if it ever gets rebuilt, it needs to slide down off the hill. Right now, it's kind of forced up the side of this hill, and the far side of the green is really, really sloped because it's having to tie into this hillside here. Plus, these trees are really, really overbearing and providing too much shade on the green. My first instinct was, well, we got to take these trees out. Well, they're good-looking trees. So I said, well, if we get a chance to redo the green, we just slide it down and over. And then that would, of course, then have the domino effect on 9 tees, which actually this is a much better position for these tees on 9. Right now, they're kind of tucked behind these trees and houses here on the side. So I'm moving the tees to the golfer's left. Over there's open space so there, a couple of trees come out, get them away. That allows the green to move on 8. Much better setup. But right now, you feel like the dog leg is much too close. This lines up the hole much, much better as the tees run up that left side versus where they are now. The cart path is kind of right in the middle of view, so we move that over a little bit at the dog leg to improve that when that gets replaced. And I think this is a place where we can put a fairway bunker deep out in that landing area. One, to help signify through the fairway at the dog leg, but also a nice visual that helps turn the hole that right now, otherwise you're just kind of staring off into a few trees and you really don't know what's going on. So this bunker is way out there. Very, very few people the general playing public won't have to deal with that unless they had a really bad first shot. But it'll be a good one for your big events and the better players. They can't just beat it down there. They're going to have to turn the ball a little bit and something to deal with. And then on the right side of the hole, coming off those condos, maybe some of you have seen it, they pile up their snow here on the far south end, and that just weeps out for a couple months and creates issue over here. So we're going to have to put some drainage in to tie into some other drainage that's further down and get that off, at least the surface, as best we can over time. And then probably replace that green. This one's really slopey. It's a bigger green. You get away with it, but there's a high percentage of that green surface that's far too steep when those green speeds get up there a little bit too much. So that's the Aspen 9. Now I'll quickly jump over to Birch 9. Birch 1, really pretty golf hole, right? You got about 6 of the golf holes in these two or three holes on Birch that kind of go up into the hills, different than the meadow holes down below. So you get that instant vibe here. Play up. Unfortunately, these tees have been moved back over time. I think maybe when the clubhouse happened, or there's just the strive for yardage. Well, it's pushed people so far back you can no longer hit to the knoll in the fairway, which is what has to happen. Everybody's still down here on the bottom or the steep slope. We need to give more players the opportunity to hit to the rise in the fairway, the high point, which is 125 yards out, a little bit further down. So what I'm doing is I'm actually moving most of the tees forward on this hole, and then doing something different here with the cart path, just a small tee back behind the cart path for just the longer players and certain times, certain events, and everybody else just moves forward, allowing the cart path to just slide straight through now over towards the range instead of having to go around the back of that tee. Get rid of all that, the railroad ties and all that stuff back there. Just streamline that, push most players up forward so they can hit up onto the. Those are the kind of things that are really difficult for the shorter player, higher handicap player. I need to mitigate that, so that's what I'm doing there. Some adjustments to the green if we get a chance to build that again. There's some steep areas falling off to the right there. B2, nice golf hole. I took some time studying these groupings of trees. I think they're fine. If you lose them, I think it's also fine. It's not a big deal. The hole's short enough that golfers can navigate those. Just some improvements to tees, and then of course getting some new tees further down. 3 cute little golf hole right there in front of the clubhouse. I don't think it needs any bunkering. You know, people just need to get up to the green as it is. I'm not even showing redoing it. I think you just rebuild it and resurface it the way it is. Maybe I sneak in some other little things around it if we get a chance, but I think it's fine the way it is. It's hard enough without bunkers. But you know, the tee work I think is the most important. You got a big aircraft carrier, the tee there. But those railroad ties and stuff around it really pinch that back side, and they're unnecessary. So I think we take that out, level that tee, and add a legitimate forward tee, and you're set on Birch 3. Birch 4 kind of gets you out of the trees down into the meadow again. Nice golf hole, some potential drainage flat area in front of the green that if we redo the green, we'll take care of that to make sure that we've got all this fairway that's coming down the hills falling off each side instead of straight into the green. And another good spot for a greenside bunker because the hole's so short, it will look good. You know, right now you got the rock, which is kind of cool. So I think we can just accent that with a greenside bunker for those, you know, because big hitters just drive this green all day long. So we need to get something down there to make them think about that a little bit. And then add forward tees, level the back. Here, transitioning to 5, I'm adjusting the cart path over to the left instead of going all the way back to the back. Let's get everybody over to that middle tee right away. And then a little place to park. And then the few that use the back tee can just walk back there. That'll clean this whole thing up and it'll allow me to widen those tees a little bit. It's just a little streamlined, better situation there. And then add a new middle tee a little bit further forward. It's a long golf hole for a lot of players, especially these 2 demographic, you know, shorter players. So let's move them up to make sure they can get in this green in 3. So that's a nice tee improvement there. And then, you know, this hole in 6 or 2 that I stand on the tee, and they just seem so linear. The way these trees are planted in rows a long time ago, I encountered that a lot over the years with trees that are boom, 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 you know, just straight along. So I need to break that up. I'm adding a few trees here to create better groupings, some on the left side to kind of screen off this openness with these newer houses on the left. But then I'm also removing a few to create some gaps. So it's kind of a combination of adding and removing trees to kind of work this golf hole through a little bit more interestingly. And then at this existing pond that's kind of a marsh up here, you know, we might need some dirt for some of these projects, especially tee work, something. Well, maybe we cut out this marsh into more of a nice pond like you have on the golf course and really set up that second landing area and shot into this par 5 green. Plus it's right here on the road where everybody can see it. It's kind of cool. So I've made this more of a legitimate water feature on the left, but still plenty of golf fairway to work the ball around for those that just want to beat the ball across the ground or need 3 or 4 shots to get there. But the better players are going to have to think about this thing now on their second and third shot. Really, really fun. Take these trees out here that are in the front. This would facilitate moving the path over to the right side, which probably will be done anyway. These right tees on number 6, as we move to 6, are unnecessary. We take those out, add forward tees on the left and just use those left tees. Much better angle from the left side. Plus you're further away from 5 and any sort of conflict there. And again, the tree work kind of helps that a little bit, breaks up that side. Put a few trees here on the left where these cart paths kind of come together and there's potential for conflict, just for some screening and safety. A few trees there. That'll kind of screen that off. And at the green, this is one I think we need to take some trees, a few of these end trees off of this row down here and open up this right side. So there's a little more room for this green and expand that green to the right with maybe a greenside bunker there someday. Just because you have the area, if you just take a couple trees, that'd be much better than it kind of forced over here and up the slope on the left and away from this traffic on the left side. So that would be a nice change for the green there. And then from Birch 6, we traverse around, go to 8. Really nice dog leg left, sets up really well, except the right side is kind of open. You know, is the lake part of the hole or is it not part of the hole? You got a cart path between it. So I'm thinking it's not part of the hole. So I'm thinking we might as well go ahead and plop in some groupings of trees along the right side over time and maybe strengthen the left side trees for those that kind of pull their shot or hook it too much and end up with some trees. Yet, you know, big, nice, expansive fairway, blocks the pump station. Just be a nice improvement. The hole's definitely wide, so we've got a lot of nice framing we can do there with some new trees. A little bit of a swamp around the green here that could use some some attention. So I got some drainage in there. And the back side of that green's pretty steep. That should be addressed at some time as well with a green renovation. And then we come home on 9. So, you know, some tee improvements there. I'm thinking we go ahead and add another back tee over here for a different approach. You got this tiny sliver one here. Let's go ahead and add this back one here. Might as well. And then we slide the other tees forward, change the fairway alignment a little bit. And again, as a finishing hole, I'm adding a fairway bunker on the left side to kind of break up this otherwise incomplete berm side of the golf hole from the range. Kind of put something in there that creates some interest. Maybe some foreground tree plantings to hide this worn out berm here to make the hole prettier. And then you just make your way home pretty much into this green. It's already been redone 1 or 2 times. I think the surface is pretty good. It's got some issues from being surrounded by trees and some substrata that's not real good for it. But I think we've opened up some trees and resurfaced that'll be just fine.
Hey, David?
Yes, sir.
Bob, Eric, you still on with us? Eric McCormick? Okay, so David, we're over an hour and we've got to have an important discussion of about 10 minutes to discuss adopting this plan. I'm thinking feel for it based on your review of Aspen and Birch. So I'm going to open it up for, I'm going to ask some very pointed questions of the council to address with you and me, and then we're going to go into our action item of actually adopting this plan. Someone will make a motion and second it and vote on that. Thank you for the detailed briefing to this point. So the question I have of council is, do you feel like with what's in your packet and with David's presentation that you have enough information to approve resolution 20-21 adopting the master plan? I'll start with Tom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thanks, Tom. Melanie?
I do. My one comment would be that it would be very nice to have a copy of that map.
We will do that. Mike?
Yes, the golf course advisory committee is 100% behind the plan as I understand it. And so with that and with everything that I've heard, yes, I am ready to move forward.
Thanks, Mike.
Yeah, I think I'm along with everyone else. Yeah, it definitely would have been helpful to have that map in front of me. Yeah, I guess for the sake of time, I don't know. This probably could have been a different meeting. That's all. I don't really have anything.
Thanks, Colby. So Eric, are you still on with us? Eric McCormick?
Yes, I am, and I apologize. I thought that map was included in the packet, so I will definitely get that out to you.
No, that'd be helpful. That'd be great. And you're on board and the golf advisory is on board, is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. All right. Would someone please make a motion to approve resolution 20-21 adopting the master plan as a planning document from McCall Golf Club?
Yes, this is Mike. I'll make a motion to approve 20-20 for the master plan for the golf course.
I'll second. This is Melanie.
All right, the motion has been made and seconded to approve resolution 20-21 adopting the master plan as a planning document from the McCall Golf Club, authorizing the mayor to sign all necessary documents and direct staff to find funding sources to implement the plan. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes. Thank you, council. The motion carries and the master plan's been adopted. Good work on that. And thank you, David, for your presentation. And Eric, thanks for coordinating all of that. Look forward to implementing that plan.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Our next agenda item is the Agenda Bill 20-273. It's a request for approval of contract fiber pulling and splicing, fall of 2020, to install, terminate fiber as part of the CARES grant funding. And this is an action item. Take it away, Chris.
Good evening, council. As you recall, we received a grant for approximately $771,000 from the state through the feds for funding of the pulling and splicing of fiber throughout the entirety of our existing conduit, as well as deploying some wireless access points for public access. The bids went out. We received 2 bids. I believe that the low number of bids was related to the short time frame, as this project has to be completed before December 15th of 2020. The winning bid was determined to be Dasco Company in approximately $126,000, and I'm asking for approval to proceed with that contract.
All right, here's how we're gonna do this. You're gonna help me with this, Chris, since it was pretty last minute. And good job on getting some bids. Sounds like it's a good amount. Let's start with the exact dollar amount. For us to make a motion, we have to have the exact dollar amount.
The exact dollar amount, it is in your email, but I can give it to you. 1 second.
So yes, we did get the email late in the day, but if you could just help us with the specifics, that'll really be helpful.
1 second.
126,269.25.
Yes, that is correct.
126,000. Could you repeat those numbers?
$126,269.25.
Thank you, Colby.
Here, I'll share that email.
Is that okay? Thank you. All right, so we're looking at 126,269.25. And the name of the company?
Dasco Company of Idaho.
Okay.
That's DAS. I'm sorry, that's DAS-CO.
Thank you. All right. Any questions from council? I'm going to quickly sweep the council and then we'll go on to a motion. Tom?
No questions.
Melanie?
No questions. Thank you.
Mike?
No question. Thank you.
Colby?
No, I don't have any.
And I do not have any questions. Good work on that, Chris. Let's make a motion and get it seconded, and then we'll have a roll call vote. The motion will be to award the fiber pulling and splicing at that dollar amount to Dasco. So I'm looking for a motion from council, please.
Bob, I'll make a motion to award the fiber pulling and splicing fall 2020 contract in the amount of $126,269.25 to Dasco and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thanks, Melanie.
I'll second.
Tom seconded it. A motion has been made and seconded to award the fiber pulling and splicing fall 2020 contract in the amount of $126,269.25 to Dasco of Idaho and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. We'll make that award. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate it.
Thank you, council. Appreciate you putting up with the short time frames.
That's all right. That's how we work. That's how we're working. We're getting a lot done this summer and
Yeah, we sure are.
do. Our next item is the Agate Street Water Main Construction Agreement. This is an action item. It's Agenda Bill 20-269. Nathan, I just saw you appear on the screen. Would you lead us through this discussion?
Yes, I will. Let me switch my microphone real quickly here so you can hear me a little bit better. Can you? Okay. I hope you can. Can you hear me, Mayor Bob?
Yes, you're coming through really well. We can
Great.
see you in your office
Okay.
there.
So, good evening, City Council. Nathan Stewart, Public Works Director. This is a water main project that stems from a very old section of our town that receives water through Davis Beach. There are 4 properties that have developed over probably the past 45 years, and the water services that they receive come from a water main in Davis Beach and crosses through backyards, across properties, kind of a design that was originally kind of motivated by the single family homes that were built there originally. And so for the past 2 years, water staff and myself have been working with those property owners to figure out a way to cost effectively improve water service and also do it correctly in accordance with the current standards. So in working with the one individual, Richard McQuarrie, who represents those property owners, we've come up with an equitable cost sharing agreement where those property owners are investing in water main improvements that would have normally been needed to build in those areas. And then the city's ponying up what we believe is our fair share to replace those services that we currently have provided, as well as provide a fire hydrant and some valving out in the Davis Street right-of-way. So this is a creative way in which both the property owners and the city can cost effectively get this improvement done, and allowing those property owners to complete this work and then our staff to inspect and approve the project will work really well. We have a local engineering firm, Nemec Engineering, Christina Nemec. We've worked with her on the Broken Ridge Commons project. Feel very comfortable that she can represent the city on inspection of that work. So as she inspects and approves this work, we'll accept that as good. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Nathan. Tom?
I have no questions.
Melanie?
None, but I'm really happy to see these types of agreements where people are actually participating. Thank you.
That.
Melanie, Mike?
Sounds good. Don't have any questions. Thanks.
Mike Colby?
Nothing for me.
And nothing for me. Thanks for showing good leadership. And like Melanie said, it's always great to have partners that want to make things, get it done right. I will look for a motion to approve the Agate Street Water Main Construction Agreement and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
It's Mike. I'll make a motion to approve the Agate Street project and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Melanie. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Agate Street Water Main Construction Agreement and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Motion carries. Good work on that, Nathan. I think you're going to brief us now on Agenda Bill 20-268, the Downtown Core Reconstruction Phase 2B.
Thank you, Mayor Bob. So this agenda bill is a request from our project team to increase the change order amount that was approved by City Council when the contract awarded the project to Granite Excavation from 10% to 20%. The main driver behind that request has to do with improvements that were done within the city campus. With the voting results of the proposed library and the recognition that relocating the pressure sewer main from between City Hall and the library to the periphery of the property and within the railroad right-of-way was desirable for future campus improvements, whatever they may be. City manager and finance director were able to find funding within the campus fund to execute those improvements, the pressure sewer relocation. The pressure sewer relocation alone was a $108,000 change order to this project. In addition to that, and more recently, working with our parks director and the city manager, we identified the value of relocating the railroad pathway to its proposed final location, which is directly over that pressure sewer main. And so in doing that and working with remaining funds within our budgets, we've been able to find an additional about $35,000 to pave that pathway. That will not only improve the safety of the use of that pathway, but it will also allow the Parks Department to better utilize their storage and staging area in the existing annex for the near future. So it's an investment in long-term in the campus, but there are many benefits to that investment that will happen immediately. With the new sidewalk in front of the annex and a variety of different things, the parks facility has a lot of limitations in the way in which they can operate. So those two investments and those change orders to this contract, in addition to some of the costs that we're seeing, unanticipated costs, additional work, addressing some property owner concerns throughout the project, dealing with electrical issues associated with flush mount junction boxes, a number of things I could go on and on about, has pushed the change order amount over that 10% threshold. I spent the last half hour or so really trying to whittle down to what I think that amount will be. It'll be closer to 15%, but we're not out of the woods yet, and that we still have work to be done. And with your permission, if you could grant a 20% change order allowance, that will give our team a level of comfort that we can get this project executed, address any last minute unforeseen issues with property owners accepting the work, and not have to come back to you again to request additional funding. Happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Nathan. Sound like a good opportunity to get a lot done and be responsible and not having to stretch this out any longer.
I'd make one additional comment that you know, the majority of the funding for this contract is coming out of the streets LOT. But for every one of these aspects, every little item that we have, we identify the appropriate funding source to do that. So, you know, for instance, the pressure sewer is being funded out of the campus improvements funds. Many of these change orders were utilizing our franchise fee funds. So the increase to this contract is not, the streets LOT is not taking the biggest hit here. We're spreading that around to be appropriate based on the funds that we have.
Thanks for explaining that. Council, questions? We're going to start with Tom.
No questions.
Melanie?
I don't know that I necessarily have a question, but I do have a comment in that, you know, well, I think we all trust you and your staff implicitly. I'm not sure that the general public would appreciate us not taking the time to approve these increases as we go along, and just, you know, handing that over. I feel like it's our responsibility. So that's basically what I have to say at this moment.
Or do you feel our process tonight, we're redeeming our responsibility, Melanie?
Well, I think, you know, 10% was one thing, but when we go up to 20%, I think, you know, I think we're getting to the point that it's negligent in us not calling a special meeting if we have to approve something.
I would point out that, you know, those two items, the pressure sewer and the pathway paving, are the main drivers in going over that 10%. Those two change orders alone are about 9%. So actually, correct me, that those are about 7%. So I think that is part of this discussion today, but that is really the rationale for why we're going over, is because of that investment on the city campus.
Thanks for explaining that. Mike, your thoughts?
I'm comfortable with everything that I've read and seen and listened to.
Thanks. Colby?
Yeah, I kind of share Melanie's views too. My issue is that these projects, the city campus was not in part of the 2B project area. You know, that pathway was not part in the project area. None of these things were in the original contract. You know, I looked back, I think March was actually probably our last in-person meeting, maybe. And you know, it's I guess a little bit concerning when you find something that's going to eat up nearly 10% contingency, and we go ahead with that, you know, putting at risk of not being able to complete the rest of the primary 2B project. And, you know, I guess this would be kind of considered part of the bid alternate from 2B. Yeah, I share Melanie's perspective. It's a little bit loose, and I'm not really excited about where I you know, I kind of understand what happened, where we saw that it would be better off to try to take care of that sewer main at the point now instead of going in and tearing stuff up again. But it kind of crept over into a different project, which is city campus, and that was not part of the Park Street or the Veterans Alley project. And really, ultimately, like, that Veterans Alley project is kind of a big trigger point for starting the whole streets lot thing to begin with. And I've been kind of frustrated this whole time that it took so long to finally replace the sewer line and all the messed up stuff that was in there. But that's a different rant. So that's my concern. I mean, I see what's going on. I see the value at this point of having gone this far, that, you know, we might as well, you know, take advantage of the contractor being on site and finishing up. But I'm not excited about how it got to this point with, you know, where we are.
Okay. Nathan and Annette, this is Bob. I just have one real pointed question. I heard a comment, I think it was from Colby, that this work is outside 2B. Are we legally in any issues here? Has our city attorney Bill reviewed that? Could you clarify that? Are we violating anything there by doing this work?
I think, Mayor Bob, I can speak. I believe we are to be within our legal right to accept these change orders, but I will defer to Bill Nichols, who's on the call.
Oops. Bill, you're still on mute, Bill.
You're off mute.
Bill, can you hear us?
Nope.
Bill, this is Mayor Bob. We can see your face on the screen, but we're not able to hear you.
He's typing an answer.
Gotcha. We will wait for your email.
It'll come over the chat with a little show conversation in the middle of your screen. It should come through there.
Okay, Dusty Joe, I'll let you communicate with him. You're doing a mind meld really good compared to me. Annette, while we're waiting for this WeChat or whatever it's called to come over our screen, do you have any legal concerns as our day-to-day executive city manager?
I am, okay, I'm off mute, right? Yeah. I did not when the staff presented it to me, because I think the work is connected to the overall Park Street improvements and addressing subsurface infrastructure problems. And it tied into the construction of the sidewalk facing streetscape along that side of Park Street. And Bill has put in the chat window here that change orders are legal if they're related to the overall work. And so it was a design item that had been contemplated previously. And when the staff approached me about the change order, one of the things we took into consideration was the tying it into the Park Street construction, because otherwise we would turn around and cut into and remove the new Park Street next summer and have to rebuild it again, which didn't make any sense to do Park Street twice to address this last remaining piece of the subsurface. So hopefully that meets the test.
Yes, in my opinion, that answers our question. Thank you, Annette, and thank you, Bill, for addressing that.
I've got a question of why would it need to be replaced next summer, I guess? Could you clarify that, please?
Can you remind me, Nathan? It's been a while since we talked about this.
I think the issue, the timing of when that pressure sewer would need to be relocated is really contingent upon the timing in which we would be dealing with significant investments associated with the library, with the campus, or anything that we would do there. So we had an opportunity to relocate this pressure sewer main so that anything that we do on the campus moving forward would likely drive the need to relocate that sewer. That sewer line goes between City Hall and the existing library. It's in a difficult location for which all of the campus master plan has shown a pedestrian connection through that area. And so in doing it as part of this project, we save having to cut back through that infrastructure in the future, whether it's next year or whenever the council decides to do additional advancements. In relocating that pressure sewer main within the railroad right-of-way and the significant grading issues that were required to meet the sewer district's cover requirements and a variety of things. That's a major drainage area for snow storage and a number of different things. There was an opportune moment to actually get that pathway constructed. And because there are available funds within the city's budget to do that, it's cost effective to do that right now. So if we awarded those two change orders, we then, with the known change orders that we have, push up against a threshold of well over 10%. So that's why I came to the council tonight, because I needed to get that authority so that we could have these discussions and look for your direction.
Thank you, Nathan. I'll look for a motion to.
So I had another question.
Go ahead, Colby.
I still kind of trying to figure out how, I mean, this is a pretty substantial thing, that sewer main there, and the 2A was the subsurface project, and it was somehow not identified in there. I guess that kind of concerns me. I've just in this past week I've had this trend of feeling like we're starting to get kind of cornered into making last minute financial infrastructure decisions by staff, and it's not the most pleasant place to be, especially when we see something that, you know, we had the street torn up and did all that subsurface infrastructure work. How, like, I'm having a hard time understanding how it was not part of this, you know, rolled into this 2B project, or whatever. I mean, I guess this is kind of more of a comment. I know that
sure.
There's a
No, I'm happy to answer that. There are a number of things happening in the city of McCall, whether it's residential construction or the city's master planning. You know, we see what's happening at St. Luke's. Things are dynamic, and construction contracts are very dynamic. So cost estimations, engineers' estimates, you name it, there's a tremendous amount of variability. And what really generated the knowledge and the information to really warrant addressing this pressure sewer location was when the library project completed their survey of the city campus property, which was not within the scope originally. You know, those were parallel master planning efforts. And when that information was combined and brought together, it was late in the game when we were in the design of phase 2B, well after phase 1A, sorry, phase 2A, which was the Park Street subsurface infrastructure. And so when we looked at that, we said, okay, well, here we have this pressure sewer main that's old. It's you know, the sewer district has no interest in spending any money on it, but it's right in the middle of our city campus property. And what do we want to do about it? Because with the proposed library, it was definitely in conflict. And so once we learned that, staff did bring that to the city manager's attention, and we discussed the idea of, well, let's see how long we can wait, because we originally thought that we might have that done by the contractor that might build the new library. But when that did not, you know, move forward, the negative impacts of not doing that today became very clear, in that we would be cutting into Park Street again with brand new asphalt and all kinds of infrastructure in there, about 20 different conduits that are that had to cross that are under the sidewalk there. So that's where the urgency became known, and that happened, you know, this spring. So that's the time frame that happened, and I think it was a difficult decision to make, but I think it is a very good long-term decision for the value of your campus property. And I think the value, the cost effectiveness that you got by approving the design contract back in the spring to do the design work, and then having a willing contractor that was mobilized on site to get the job done, is really a cost savings in the long run to the city. So I feel good about the costs that you're spending on these projects. I feel good about the funding sources that you're using. You're not using the Streets LOT fund to improve your city campus. So we're using the appropriate funds. It's just, it is a lot of costs. There's a lot of expenses that are happening right now. And hopefully those expenses will be worth it with the results that you get out of the construction.
Thanks, Nathan.
Bob, you're on mute.
Thank you, Annette. I think I'm off mute now. Colby, do you have any further questions for Nathan or comment?
No, I don't have anything. Thanks for clarifying all that, Nathan. It just kind of helps keep everything in perspective for everyone and all the information out there. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I certainly share that anxiety. I get every Thursday I have a construction meeting and I hold my breath to see where we're at. And you know, we've been through the war on this project, and we're at the end game. And certainly we need the council to make a decision here, because we won't authorize these additional change orders if we don't move forward here. So, and we'll do what the council wants us to do.
Thanks, Nate. I'll look for a motion to authorize city staff to manage the change orders up to 20% over the initial contract amount for the downtown core reconstruction phase 2B project.
This is Mike. I'll make a motion to authorize city staff to manage change orders up to 20% over the initial contract amount for the downtown core reconstruction phase 2B project.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to authorize city staff to manage change orders up to 20% over the initial contract amount for the downtown core reconstruction phase 2B project. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
No.
Councilmember Holmes,
No.
Thank you, council. The motion carries. We will move on to the next agenda bill 20-265, the request the approval of a construction contract for the Brown Park slope stabilization improvements. This is also an action item. My understanding, we got some informal information, Kurt, that this is less than the engineer's estimate.
Correct. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Good evening, Mayor Giles, members of the council, Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director. So the agenda bill in front of you is to approve a contract for construction for the Brown Park slope stabilization improvements. This is, again, I know Mike, Councilmember Machesik and Nielsen are very familiar with this project as they sit on the MURA board. This project is funded through MURA as that district sunsets, and they work with city staff to complete some of the final pieces of their original master plan. Mayor Giles, you were correct. During August and September, the city, with assistance from Horrocks Engineering, conducted formal bidding for this project. And again, the project consists of, this is what we're considering phase 1 or project 1A of a number of possible phases throughout the next year to try and complete with funding through the McCall redevelopment agencies before that district sunsets in September of next year. And I say potential projects because we are still in engineering final design and looking at where those numbers are going to come in at, which will drive final engineering and prioritization of what we are going to be able to complete over the next year based on MURA's list of prioritization and again, what's feasible to construct and fund. So that said, Phase 1B consists of just the shoreline from the existing dock at the north end of Brown Park, heading south along the shore, wrapping around the corner towards East Lake Street. This project was constructed over 20 years ago through a permit with the Army Corps. It's failing. We've done geotechnical work to determine what the best solution is for this, and Horrocks Engineering has come up with a design solution, which was what was bid. And so as we wrap up, I'm happy to answer any questions on the scope of the work. I can share my screen for those council members that aren't familiar with the scope of work. For now, the bid opening occurred on the 15th of September. We had 3 respective bids on that project. Both city staff and Horrocks Engineering reviewed all bids received for accuracy and responsiveness. Attached is a letter from, which is in your packet, from project engineer Heidi Carter discussing the bid results in comparison to the engineer's estimates. I will front load that those estimates were high. This is a pretty tricky project to estimate, especially in this market. And we came in significantly lower, roughly 52% below the engineering estimates, which in this market is very, very pleasing to hear. Especially knowing what we have coming down the pipeline the next few years, trying to maximize those funds with some of the other phases and project numbers within this scope of work. Falvey's LLC was the low responsive bidder. In your packet is a bid tabulation that shows kind of the details of all that. Again, staff and the engineering team went through this closely. We think their numbers are good despite being significantly lower than the other 2. And we feel really good about this. Falvey's got a reputation for shoreline work within the community. He's done a number of projects for the city. All have resulted in very positive outcomes. So we're confident in his ability to get the work done. So with that, happy to answer any questions the council may have on the project or the contract document or the bids.
Thank you, Kurt. Tom, any questions?
What would happen if this wasn't shored up, if this wasn't repaired?
So if you've been down to Brown Park, we would continue to see the existing riprap. From what we can tell, it's slowly migrating out and down slope. I think that was a result of just not having, those base courses keyed in. That's also been kind of justified by the engineering team in the geo report. We did a number of drill core samples down there to try and identify that, and which has driven this current design. So it's pulling away from the path. We're starting to lose property into the lake, which in turn means, we lay it back and we lose existing park and public open space on the waterfront. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Melanie, any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Mike?
No questions. Just want to clarify though that, the Urban Renewal Agency has authorized this and the city is doing the work on behalf of the Urban Renewal Agency. So this isn't really a decision for city council as to whether or not we want to do this or not. It's more of a question of the way that this is set up, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kurt, but that Urban Renewal has decided to do this. City Council is approving it because the city is doing the management of the project on behalf of Urban Renewal. Does that make sense? Do we all, just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Correct, Mike. Thanks for clarifying that. Sorry I neglected to mention that.
I think city council still has to approve anything with the on this level, but to add to Tom's question, this project is they've done a good job of designing it and developing like a good interface on the shoreline there that's usable, and I think the plans and the potential for the sunsetting of the MRA, that the current district with the projected budget that we have and the proposed projects that are coming up in this, I think it fits pretty nicely into being able to get some good infrastructure projects done you know, that's coming out of a separate funding pool. So I think Kurt's done a good job of planning on this one and working it through.
If I could build off of Colby's comments there, again, I'm trying to be conscientious of everyone's time this evening. I know you have other items on the agenda, but can everybody, I just shared my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So this is a very conceptual rendering. We've not redesigned any of the pathways in Brown Park yet. This is a concept. We're working on that as we kind of dive into fall and winter. But it kind of shows, you know, we don't want to just fix the riprap in shoreline on Brown Park. We want to improve the usability and aesthetic qualities of it. And what we're trying to do, which I'll get to in kind of the recommended action item here, is rather than just armor this like any riprap along some highway and fully stabilize the bank, we want to, one, stabilize the bank and fix the failing infrastructure, but we also want to do it in a way where we can create this interactive stair step riprap that the public can use to interact with the water, possibly create, you know, a few opportunities for some platforms that may be cantilevered out, and in those areas where we can have just a less expensive riprap design, again, to improve fishing access and interaction with the lake. So we're trying to do this and create this kind of prominent, usable shoreline versus what's out there, which is just a kind of a jumble of rocks in your standard riprap. So when the bid went out, there's kind of two cross sections that the contractor bid on, knowing that those interactive stair step sections, and I'm going to share, see if I drag this over, can you see this drawing now?
No, we're still looking at the first drawing.
Okay, well, I won't try and ruin what we have going, but the goal would be underneath the platforms, which now that the project came in so far under the estimate, it frees up possible funds to maybe implement some of these other great public amenities on the shoreline. So that's what we're looking at now. This project is going to just stabilize the bank while creating some kind of unique aesthetic interactive riprap. So I think it's going to be a very exciting project. Again, we're excited that Falvey was the responsive low bidder, because we've seen his work both on our projects and other projects around the lake and on the river and on Cascade Reservoir. And so I think it's going to be really neat in that regard. So again, Mike and our Councilmember Machezik and Nielsen have been through a lot of these presentations to the Mira board. They're very well versed in the project and scope of all these different phases. So thanks for chiming in there, Colby. And again, I'm happy to talk to any elements of this design to bring other council members up to speed on it.
So the other part, Bob, that I was going to finish with was also that, just for frame of reference, because we're deciding about, giving this bid to Falvey's, is that for those that aren't aware, Falvey also did the work on the Woolly Boardwalk, which is yet another example of that contractor's work, and just wanted to highlight that as well.
Good point.
You're on that?
All right, I will look for a motion to award the Brown Park slope stabilization. You can read the recommended action and put that in your motion for this agenda bill.
It's Mike. I would make the motion to award the Brown Park slope stabilization improvements construction contract to Falvey's LLC in the amount of $358,000, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents, and authorize city staff and its change orders up to 15% over initial contract amount.
I'll second, Bob.
Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Mike. Motion has been made and seconded to award the Brown Park slope stabilization improvements construction contract to Falvey's LLC in the amount of $358,000. Authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents and authorize city staff to manage change orders up to 15% over the initial contract amount. May I have a roll call vote?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Holmes,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Sowers.
Yes. Thank you, council. The motion carries. We will award the Brown Park project. Our next agenda bill is this is a public right of way. Agenda Bill 20-267. I'm not sure who's helping us on this item. Annette, who will be helping us on Agenda Bill 20-265?
That would be Michelle. I think she's on the line.
267. Michelle, I see half of your face on the screen. There you are.
Okay, let me lean back. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Michelle Grunewald, Community and Economic Development Director. The item in front of you tonight is part of our effort to help the business community during COVID and kind of navigate the impacts. So really the purpose here is to create a process and a permit structure that allows businesses to temporarily utilize our public right-of-ways. So they could apply, for example, to use a sidewalk or a public parking space in order to accommodate customers or merchandise in a time when people may not be able to gather indoors. So what we realized is we really didn't have an easy or clear process. And so what we've done is pretty quickly tried to create that. Fortunately for us, other communities have already done this, so we didn't have to reinvent the wheel this time. So we modeled kind of a draft application after the city of Ketchum. And so the idea is that it's a revocable encroachment license application. And so a business could make application. It would get submitted to the city planner, who would then circulate it for department as well as other agency reviews. And then it's temporary, so it'd be valid for 180 days. As part of this effort, we also realized that some of these businesses may be restaurants that serve alcohol. So there are also